location for the proposed super embassy. Tuesday is the deadline. Yes, this would be the biggest embassy in Europe if approved, if Starmer bows down to Beijing, as these protesters are saying. Behind me you can see nobody wants this.
No depression at borders! We know that we have to stand up to the abuses of China. And what worries me is that we have a government right now that seems to be scared of China.
What are you doing here at the protest? That's an interesting sign you've got there. Clearly you're not a fan of our Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Why is that?
He's kowtowing to the Chinese government, right? A dictator regime.
Robert Jenrick defected to Reform yesterday. He called the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch a leader with no backbone. She's obviously shown up here today and done a speech. It's kind of unprecedented to have that sort of flagrant support. What did you think about her speech and her backing this?
I think any party backing our cause, like going against the building of the embassy, I'd say we welcome them.
Why are you here today?
So I'm Tibetan and I'm here to oppose the Chinese mega embassy being built here. Unfortunately, we think the UK government might allow this to happen, and I think it sends the wrong message to people who have been oppressed by the Chinese government, who are still being continuously oppressed in free countries. There are lots of Chinese decisions which are being followed by Chinese police states.
Now, we know that there are plainclothes Chinese policemen potentially in the crowd, so a lot of them want to stay anonymous, which is very understandable. Why are you here today?
Because it's very simple. It's no mega embassy, and this is absolutely unacceptable because this is a very peak area, and I don't think any one of the country they will have choose one of the peak area, prime area, and make it to their one of the I think it's the biggest embassy in Europe. So this is absolutely unacceptable.
This government is engaging with China confidently and pragmatically and challenging them where we need to. Because for our security...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side, this is Talk.
Past 6. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. More of you are listening, and you're listening for longer. Thank you to our incredible growing audience at the home of Common Sense. This network is nothing without you, and we've got a big 4 hours to come. Breaking this morning, a Prime Minister on the brink, with Labour backbenchers and top grandees within the party calling for his resignation. When will we see cabinet ministers make their move? It's clearly when, not if, the Prime Minister goes, but amid all of the political drama, particularly surrounding the appointment of Lord Mandelson to UK Ambassador to the United States, there's one group of people who have been completely forgotten in all of this. The British public, who are dealing with inflation, who are being laid off from work. A British public that are crippled with ever higher taxes, eye-watering energy bills. A public who feel less safe than ever to walk the streets or own property. A public who are dealing with the consequences of open borders and a rapidly changing country that they didn't vote for. A public that are concerned about their kids' futures. So the country's got problems. Here's a question. What is the most important thing? Has Starmer got to go? Should he fall on his sword? And will it make a blind bit of difference if he goes? As Ed Miliband, Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner jostle for position, Could things get worse in the post-Starmer era? So that's my question to you at 6:05 on a Friday morning. Could Starmer's replacement actually be worse? My number is 0344 499 1000. Tommy's on the phones today. He's coming in hot, let me tell you. He's got a twinkle in his eye. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Your messages, your interaction, the voice notes, the calls, they're not part of the show, they are the show. So call me now, 0344 499 1000. Book your place on the show. I'll be dealing with Starmer in no uncertain terms in a special Dolan's Dispatch at 9 o'clock. You won't want to miss it. Will Starmer's replacement be worse? 0344 499 1000. A big 4 hours to come. As the saying goes, let's talk. Well, happy Friday, one and all. Your weekend starts here. Lovely to have your company. It is 6 minutes past 6 in the morning. Whatever you're up to, may I wish you well. You might just be still slumbering in bed. You know that thing where the alarm goes, you hit snooze about 11 times? You just cannot get yourself out of that bed, especially how cold it is at the moment. If that's the case, then come on, get the kettle on. Let's go. You may well be getting breakfast into your kids' stomachs, or you may well be taking them to school as we speak. You might be at the tail end of a night shift, in which case I salute you for your contribution to the unstoppable machine that is the British economy. Let's take a look at today's front pages. Daily Mail. As Starmer fights for his political life and MPs line up to warn that either he or his chief aide has to quit, ex-deputy leader tells friends she is primed to strike. Rayner, I'm ready to go, is the headline. Angela Rayner has told friends that she's ready to launch a leadership campaign as Labour MPs warn Keir Starmer that his premiership is hanging by a thread. Now, this is a disgraced former government minister that had to leave the cabinet because she was a housing secretary that didn't pay stamp duty. So Starmer's going to go because of corruption, because of employing someone that he knew was close friends with a paedophile, and we're going to replace a disgraced figure like Starmer, who's got no judgment, no ethics, no moral code. We're going to replace him with someone that's had to leave the cabinet for not paying her taxes. You couldn't make it up. By the way, this is a woman that, like Mandelson, has also perpetually been shrouded in controversy and allegations of corruption. Do you remember her expensive Apple AirPod earphone things? I don't know what they're called. My 16-year-old son knows what they're called. AirPods. All I know is they cost about 250 quid. She claimed them on expenses. This is a woman whose residence was a great source of mystery in the 2010s, and that related to council tax too, because it mattered where she said she lived and where she didn't live, and it mattered because she was an MP, and it was all a little bit murky. And she said, oh, well, I lived here, but I didn't live there, and funny enough, she made money as a result of that. This is a woman in Angela Rayner that has campaigned against right to buy. Well, I've got to tell you, Christian, that she made a small fortune from selling her own council property. She then pulls up the ladder so that you and I cannot do the same thing. So, where did she live in the 2010s? The Apple AirPods, the right to buy hypocrisy, and then the small matter of being the housing secretary and being a tax evader, not paying her stamp duty. By the way, stamp duty that old Rachel Reeves has cranked up. The Tories would get rid of it, which is one of the few good policies they've got these days. She still hasn't paid that money. She remains a tax evader. So we're going to get rid of a corrupt, zero judgment Prime Minister in Keir Starmer, and we're replacing him with Britain's answer to Bernard Madoff, right? Angela Rayner, she is a provably duplicitous person. Is she corrupt? I don't know. If you're a tax evader, if you don't pay your council tax, is that corrupt? I think it is, because we've just had the 31st of January, and I don't know about you, but I paid my taxes, and I'm guessing you did too. But Ange, Big Ange, the ginger growler, doesn't pay her taxes, and she's the answer to Britain's problems. The issue we've got, folks, is that whoever replaces Angela Rayner, well, by the way, yeah, give it 6 months, then it'll be Ange, then it'll be someone else. Whoever replaces Starmer will be worse. That's my view. Let me know if you disagree. 0344 499 1000. The reason they'll be worse is because they will be left-wing. And there'll be more left-wing than Starmer. They'll have to be. And the reason why is because those backbenchers are incredibly left-wing. That's why they push back on the most minimal tweaking of the welfare budget, right? It was very, very, very small changes to the scope of disability benefits. It was 5 million. It was a trivial sum. And the backbenchers wouldn't even have that because they're so left-wing. And the membership are crazy woke. Half the membership quite fancy the Green Party now. That's how radically socialist they are. So if you want to win the leadership of that party, you're going to have to be super left-wing, which means more socialism. What does it mean? It means more wokery in our public institutions, more pronoun badges and rainbow flags, more Britain hating by way of a narrative in our museums, in our public institutions, in our schools, at university, more pro-Gaza nonsense, more taxes, more borrowing, more welfare, and a renewed war on alarm clock Britain. So I don't know what you think, but I believe that Starmer's replacement will be worse. The other suggestion is that McSweeney should go. Now, McSweeney is the architect of the entire Starmer project, and it is likely that he will be fired because Keir Starmer, he's a lot of things. I think he's not very clever. He's got zero judgment. He's got no backbone. He's duplicitous. I find him incredibly dishonest. He's actually the broken clock that isn't even right twice a day. Because you know when your watch is broken, at 6:15 twice a day, your broken watch it tells the truth, doesn't it? Starmer is the broken watch that isn't even right twice a day. He's got the reverse Midas touch. And but there is one thing about him that is true, is that he's ruthless. So, for example, he could lie to the Labour Party membership and pretend to be a Corbynite for all those years, and then he gets elected, and then he turns out to be on the right of the party in the Blair mould, because he's ruthless. He doesn't care. He's thick-skinned. He's got no ethics. He's got no conscience about it. So I think he won't think twice about firing McSweeney if it means that he can stay in number 10 for a few more months. The issue you've got with firing McSweeney is, well, McSweeney's not the problem. It is the judgment of our Prime Minister. It's his incompetence and it's his terrible policies. The other thing about McSweeney is that he's one of the more politically moderate figures within the Labour movement. So if he goes, then the Starmer project shifts leftwards. And I think you'll find that now's not a great time for socialism, because we've already got unions out of control. We've got the public sector with their inflation-busting pay rises. So they're going to want their pound of flesh if McSweeney goes. The Prime Minister, if he wants to cling on, he's going to have a radical socialist agenda. And given the fact that we're now spending 100 billion quid a year on servicing the cost of our debt alone, just the interest, then I can assure you socialism is the last thing we need. My overview, folks, is that we're doomed. At 6:13, I've got to tell you that, right? I've got great news for you. I've got good news and bad news. Do you want the good news, Christian, or the bad news? The good news is that change is coming, and in 3 years' time, there will be a political revolution. It's going to be wild. Because the great thing about political failure is the worse it gets, the bigger the change that comes. We saw that in '79. Britain was the lazy man of Europe. The IMF, right? We went with our begging bowl just to keep the lights on. There were literally, the gravediggers were on strike, so there were bodies not being buried. That's how bad it got, and that's how Thatcher was able to deliver her revolution. Well, we're going to have the same thing in 3 years, but I have to tell you, that was the good news. Change is coming big time. But the next 3 years are going to get worse, because we will shift leftwards, and we're going to replace Starmer with someone like Ed Miliband, or with someone like the ginger growler Angela Rayner, who has a £1 million war chest. What I will say about Rayner, selfishly, it'll be great for Talk Breakfast, because she's a character, she's a Trumpian figure, she's a populist, she's fearless, she's got a compelling backstory, she's a headline-making machine. No ... are given. And so life will be very interesting. Our lives will get worse, but it will be interesting. And we will definitely have a lot to say about it. I suspect that she's the one that will get it. I've been saying it for months now. A close friend of hers, Matthew Torbett, told me on this show that she doesn't want the top job. Do me a favour, Big Matt. Of course she wants it. The main reason she wants to be Prime Minister is the R word, revenge. She just wants to punish Keir Starmer for sacking her in the first place. No love lost between the two of them. Do you remember, by the way, this is how useless Starmer is. He tried to fire her a couple of years ago. Right? He's like, I'm going to get rid of Angela because she's very disruptive. He tried to fire her. The next day, she had more jobs. She's the first person ever where the boss tries to fire you and then you get a pay rise. You actually get a promotion. That's how useless Starmer is, and it's how smart a mover politically old Angela is. The Sun newspaper exclusive: teen is target. On me red Sun. Rooney's lad Kai offered Man United deal. Kai Rooney is following in the footsteps of his superstar dad Wayne. After being offered a new deal by Manchester United, the 16-year-old attacker, who finishes school this summer, has been in United's academy for several years. His dad is the Red Devils' record goal scorer. Can I say fair play to Kai Rooney? Because it's not easy being the kid of a famous person. And it's not easy to get to that level as a footballer when your father was a famous footballer, because you're in their shadow. The other issue you've got, the reason why there are so many working class boys in football is because, a bit like boxing, it's kind of your way out, isn't it? For a lot of working class communities, if you can get your lad into a football academy, then there is a real hope of a great career and a great income. So lots of working class families encourage their kids and their boys, and these days girls, to go into football, to actually do those trials for the academies. What you got with Kai Rooney, right, this is a lad that's grown up in the lap of luxury. His father a multi-millionaire. So normally the kids of those high achievers are quite lazy and entitled, and God knows what they do with their private lives. So this lad, he's obviously got a bit of discipline and he's got the drive of his father. Very difficult to be driven when your parents are super rich. So fair play to him, and quite an interesting positive story. The Daily Telegraph: Rayner tilt at number 10 hit by tax inquiry. Angela Rayner risks being prevented from launching a leadership challenge against Sir Keir Starmer over an unresolved investigation into her tax affairs. Backbenchers have said they're ready to back her as the Prime Minister faces growing calls to quit over his handling of the Lord Mandelson scandal. Let me tell you that the Labour movement have got no issue whatsoever with the corruption scandal and Rayner. They don't care, because I don't think Labour do care about corruption. We found out with Freebiegate, they all had their hands in the till. Those lefties are such hypocrites. They're greedy. They love free money. They love rich people. Look at Mandelson. Right? The same with Blair and Brown. Oh, you know, they go into the City of London. They love their billionaires. They are total hypocrites. One of my biggest bugbears on Talk Breakfast is this idea that the lefties are the good people. Do me a favour. Johnson, Prime Minister behaving like a dictator with election delay. And NHS recruits nurse specialising in cousin marriage for Bradford. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people about this first cousin marriage. You have communities in this country, ethnic communities, where first cousin marriage is the norm or even encouraged. And I've talked to people about it, and I know some quite high up people in the world of public life, and many of them, as I was, were surprised that this was even legal. Most people thought it was illegal. First cousin marriage, you don't do that. It's incredibly dangerous, and it leads to deformities and health conditions for these poor kids who often need very expensive NHS support for the rest of their lives. Why isn't it illegal? Let me know your thoughts on this. First cousin marriage, should it be made illegal? 0344499 1000. Should first cousin marriage be made illegal? I would make it illegal. Anybody that participates in that, I would jail, because it is devastating for the child. And can you believe that NHS is spending resources on this? Don't forget, there was a leaflet a few weeks ago doing the rounds in which the NHS was extolling the benefits of first cousin marriage. I mean, seriously, has the world gone mad? We're paying for this, folks. Can you believe it? The Times newspaper: move out of Westminster or it will take 60 years to repair. Now, this is another growing scandal. The cost of repairing the Houses of Parliament. It's going to cost every taxpayer £1,000, and it will take 60 years to finish if MPs refuse to actually leave the venue. The overall cost, if they do leave, right, so if MPs vacate, it'll cost you and I £15.6 billion, and it will take between 19 and 24 years. We'll look at HS2. That therefore means it will cost 50 billion, and it will take 100 years. But it's an important building, isn't it? It's the seat of our democracy. But what do you think about that, the cost? Are you willing to pay £1,000 per household to repair the Houses of Parliament? PM labelled gullible and weak over Mandelson. Starmer issues apology as Labour dismay grows. And harnessing dreams to solve puzzles is no fantasy. Dreams have long been credited with delivering flashes of insight. Research now suggests they could be engineered to maximise their problem-solving potential. What a boring story. Why is that on the front page? I couldn't care excuse me. I couldn't care less. What a boring headline. Harnessing dreams to solve puzzles is no fantasy. US diplomat, right? The British ambassador to the United Kingdom has lost his job because of his links to a US paedophile billionaire, and they think that's front page news. The Guardian, Starmer in appeal to Labour MPs as pressure grows for number 10 reset, and revealed private jet owned by Trump friend used for ICE deportation flights. Good. That's great. Those are ICE raids. Fantastic. We need them here. Now, what happened with those two individuals is absolutely tragic. And what that is a failure of an individual police officer and their judgment, and it's a tragedy. What I would say, I wouldn't interfere with law enforcement, and I certainly wouldn't interfere whilst heavily armed, which is what happened to that chap, Pretty. It's very sad, though, and it's against the rule of law that they are no longer with us. There should be investigations and justice should prevail for their families. But 500,000 people have been deported already. We can only dream of such a policy here. And by the way, this isn't just like lovely some cuddly uncle who's out there, you know, picking apples. We're talking here about criminals, murderers, paedophiles, thieves who shouldn't be in America. We've got the same problem here. They shouldn't be in the United Kingdom. Last but not least, the Daily Mirror. Starmer's survival battle. Keir and present danger. Keir Starmer was left fighting for his political career over Peter Mandelson's relationship with paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The PM apologised for making Mandelson US ambassador and said documents would prove the former minister lied about the friendship. Listen to that. Starmer's survival battle. The Daily Mirror, they're like the Spartans, aren't they? They're like the Japanese soldiers still fighting the Second World War in the early 1960s. I'm so sorry, Daily Mirror and Guardian. It's over. And we told you Starmer would be a terrible Prime Minister. We all knew it before the election when he was asked about inflation. Do you remember those TV debates? And they said, what are you going to do about inflation? And he said, my father was a toolmaker. That was the answer. They said, what are you going to do about illegal immigration? My father was a toolmaker. What are you going to do about unemployment? My father was a toolmaker. A fraud, a charlatan. He's on his way out. But the next question, at 22 minutes past 6 on a Friday morning, will his replacement be worse? This is Talk Breakfast.
I think they are well aware, the government, of what's going to come out. They're basically stabbing each other in the back at that point because they're more complicit than what people realise. I don't think they want it to come out, and I've heard on the grapevine that the inquiry through the government has fell through, it's collapsed. Yeah, I don't know why they expected us to be comfortable with sitting across from, like you say, former police officers, former social workers, and feeling that comfortability to be able to open up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, listen, folks, Sir Keir Starmer is in hot water because he appointed Peter Mandelson as UK ambassador to the United States, even though he knew that Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier, the convicted paedophile, and he remained friends following his conviction. By the way, there is more to that than meets the eye, because there is a photograph of Mandelson celebrating Epstein's birthday with candles after his conviction. And of course, there is the fact that he stayed in Epstein's townhouse as well. This was all information available to the Prime Minister when he gave him the top job. Let's take a listen to Starmer defending his position in the House of Commons.
Before he was appointed ambassador, Mandelson was asked directly about the nature of his relationship with Epstein. He was asked whether he had stayed at Epstein after his conviction. He was asked whether he had accepted gifts and hospitality, about whether he had been fully transparent about the relationship. He portrayed Epstein as someone he barely knew. And when that became clear, and it was not true, I sacked him.
It's funny, he really cuts a forlorn figure, doesn't he, Christian, the Prime Minister there? It wasn't, forgive me, in the House of Commons, it was a press conference to announce some rather meagre initiative to improve communities. 800 million they're going to spend on communities across the country. Couple of things, that won't even touch the sides. 800 million, what's that, a few days of migrant hotels? Do me a favour. Anyhow, he stood there looking forlorn, no tie. Isn't that what they did with Saddam Hussein? When he was deposed, they took the tie off just in case he would do something he might regret. He knows it's over. Let's take a listen to his hypocrisy, right? This is him calling out Boris Johnson on Partygate in January 2022.
After months of deceit and deception, the pathetic spectacle of a man who's run out of road. His defence that he didn't realise he was at a party. It is so ridiculous that it's actually offensive to the British public.
Oh yeah, well, it's offensive to our intelligence, because you could easily say that about the Prime Minister now. By the way, that clip has triggered me because that was during the COVID pandemic, and you've got all those idiot cabinet ministers sitting there with their masks on while the Prime Minister is standing up without a mask. Make it make sense. We'll never go back to that madness, not on my watch. I'm delighted to say that a sane voice in this crazy world is one of the country's finest journalists and broadcasters, Linda Jubilee. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, listen, where to start? So let's go for sort of political sort of survival. Is it a case of when, not if now, Starmer goes?
I'm sure that it is. I think that it might not be that quickly. I've heard that if 2 cabinet ministers resigned this week, he could be gone by Sunday.
Whoa.
But I think that's far too soon. I think that it could be after the Gorton and Denton by-election, and the chances are now that that will be a disastrous result for Labour. Sometime after that, maybe even before the May by-elections, it's game over.
Well, it's a dilemma for the party, isn't it? Because I share your view that it's when, not if. And if I was a party strategist, I would possibly think that maybe after May's better, because you want the next leader to start with a clean slate. Because I suspect a new leader will still preside over an electoral bloodbath in May. And therefore then they've got to take the rap for that. Do you think?
But that's assuming that the public will bear with it for that long. Because in this particular story, which bears striking hallmarks, for example, to the expenses scandal, there is, and it's much worse than that, it's like the Profumo scandal of decades ago. You've got the public is incandescent with rage over this. On the drive on the way in, it's all I was chatting about. And on public transport, I'm sitting talking to fellow passengers. The only other time I've ever heard anything like this is when COVID started, and the sole subject of conversation right at the start was COVID.
Yeah.
It's exactly like that now. People who weren't engaged in politics at all, and we know the vast majority of the public don't care about politics, they're now suddenly talking about politics all the time, because actually it's more than just politics, it's morality. It's the fact that we are governed by people who have a person who has no moral compass, and that has incensed so many people.
Because at the heart of this story is that the Prime Minister knew that Peter Mandelson had continued some kind of relationship with Epstein after his conviction for child sex trafficking, and that's the point, is that they continue. If it was a case of, look, a lot of famous people knew Epstein, a lot of celebrities were in touch with him because he was just a rich, powerful guy, and that happens. And then he was convicted for this awful crime. That was it. I cut off all contact. Mandelson did not. Starmer knew that.
Yeah, he absolutely knew that the problem was with Peter Mandelson. It predated that anyway. He's always known that the Prince of Darkness was a problem. He's known that for years and years and years.
Do you think that nickname is a red flag in any way?
Yeah. I mean, that's a clue.
Have you got a daughter, by the way?
I do.
Right, can you imagine if your daughter said, like, I've got a new boyfriend?
His name's the Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, that's his nickname.
Oh,
we
God.
call him Lucifer, but his heart's in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be like, oh, great, I can't wait for the wedding.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, I've interviewed Peter Mandelson. I interviewed him in his office in Brussels.
Was he in his underpants then, or...?
No, thankfully.
Okay,
don't remind me of that picture. I feel a bit queasy.
Shower robe.
I feel a bit queasy.
I know.
But I will tell you this, that I went over there to interview him because I'd done a story for ITV's Tonight with Trevor McDonald. Yeah. It was on fair trade, and he was a sidebar interview. We got there, and he refused to do the interview because it wasn't Trevor who'd come across the channel to interview him, because he didn't understand that he was the sidebar interview, not the main interview. And so he refused to do it. So I sat in a coffee bar with a crew, which was a cameraman, an AP, a sound person and a producer in a coffee bar for 5 hours, while I negotiated with his handler that we would actually be able to get a few sound bites for him by the end of the afternoon. That told me all I needed to know. What he cared about was not the interview, he cared about having his picture taken with Sir Trevor McDonald, because what he cares about is money and influence and being with famous people. And that was in 2007.
2000, and he's got a massive ego.
Very big, obviously, yeah. Oh, I paid for it. Believe me, I put my foot down and got the interview, but I paid for it.
Was that prior to his political comeback under the government of Gordon Brown?
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah, so he wasn't in the cabinet at that time.
He was the EU Trade Commissioner.
Right,
yeah.
That's it. So he was in, a significant political role, but not quite back in UK government. And what you saw there, ego, hubris,
yeah, absolutely,
and a shallow obsession with the photo op.
Yeah, I think that his Achilles heel, and lots of people have told me this, people on both sides have told me that his Achilles heel is A, money, and B, this desire to rub shoulders with the rich and famous.
Wow. Well, listen, folks, Starmer is going to pay the price, no doubt. Let's take a listen to the background to this and what Starmer knew or didn't know about Mandelson when he was appointed.
He did a report this summer on a JP Morgan report which suggested that Peter Mandelson had stayed at the New York townhouse of Jeffrey Epstein in 2009 when he was de facto deputy prime minister, and while the financier was imprisoned for soliciting prostitution from a minor. Do you think that Lord Mandelson, who is, of course, a close political ally of yours, has some questions to answer?
On Peter Mandelson, look, and I do try to give pretty full answers in these sessions, I don't know any more than you do. And therefore, there's not really much I can add to what you already know, I'm afraid. And, that's simply the state of the affairs. Thank you, Jim.
Yvonne is not happy on the text. Good morning, Mark. Starmer's apology is so insincere, it's sickening. Politics is a dirty business, my friend. I've just got one here from Janice. Did Dolan get dressed in the dark this morning, or is he colourblind? Well, listen, folks, if you're curious about what I'm wearing, then why don't you head over to YouTube, search Talk and Up We Pop, and you'll see the TV output, because this is a radio show with, of course, a massively growing radio audience. We're on the telly as well. We go viral every single day. Listen, folks, there's no show without you. I want your opinions. Will Starmer's replacement be worse? And next up, I'll be asking Linda Jubilee, was Starmer lying about what he knew and didn't know about Peter Mandelson? This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
6:37, you are listening to Talk Breakfast. Margaret says, Mark, will Angela Rayner be allowed to be leader of the Labour Party if she hasn't paid the stamp duty on her house purchase? No, she won't, Margaret, but they'll sort that out. That will be fudged. What she'll do is just go to Lord Ali, who pays for everything, doesn't he? Tracy in Chingford. Good morning, Mark. If Starmer goes, they may as well put the names in a hat for the successor, as every one of them are just as useless. Jerry says, good morning, Mark. The ginger growler, Ange, doesn't want the top job for the R word, revenge, but for the P word, PM's pension. Look at Liz Truss, PM for less time it took a cabbage to rot, and she's got a sweet 6-figure pension pot for the rest of her life. Bill in Cheshire. Good morning, Mark. Starmer's judgment, the evidence. Rachel Reeves, flexible CV. Mandelson, enough said. Louise Haigh, criminal record. Angela Rayner, tax evasion. Jonathan Reynolds, CV lies. Tulip Sadiq, corruption allegations. Lord Ali, Mr. Freebie, etc., etc., etc. Well, you're right about that, Bill. Listen, the public get it. Those who govern us do not. With me in the studio is Linda Jubilee, broadcaster and journalist. Linda, do you think that the Prime Minister has been lying about how much he knew or didn't know in the run-up to the appointment of Mandelson as ambassador to the US?
He must have known that Peter Mandelson was a liability. He must have known that. He must have known he maintained still a strong relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't believe him. It's hard to catch him out in a direct lie, but that has happened over the last few days.
Because Starmer's defence is, I was lied to. And Starmer's position is that he understood that Mandelson barely knew Epstein. Is that credible?
No.
Is that credible?
That's just incredible. He clearly knew. He clearly knew that the relationship was a close one.
Yeah.
I mean, there are pictures of them over birthday cake celebrations, buying accessories in a men's fashion shop, all sorts
Trying on
of
belts
things.
of all
Trying
things.
on belts, yes, exactly. But they must have had a close relationship. I don't believe that Keir Starmer didn't know about that. Especially knowing Peter Mandelson's record and reputation for cultivating relationships with rich and powerful people, whether they are US citizens or maybe Russians.
Could Starmer's replacement be worse? Angela Rayner is the front runner. Here's a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby. Got an unpopular opinion today, but I'm going to say it anyway. I reckon Angela Rayner is going to be a great choice for Prime Minister. You know, there's a lot of people clamouring for communism in our country. We see it every weekend. So let's go full-on communist. Let's give them what they want. And then when none of us have got a job and then they can't get the benefit money and we're having blackouts and then we're all eating each other because we're starving, you know, it'll guarantee that all these young people who call for it so much will think, you know what, I've had enough of this, don't like it, it's too much hard work. Anyway, mate, great to have you back, great show.
Sean, you're a star. Well, look, thank you so much for your voice note. Happy Friday. And if there is a famine, I won't be eating you, Sean, because you're far too valuable. All right? You're far too wise. You're far too funny. I bet you're handsome as well. So I will just abstain so you can stay on the planet. Listen, he's got his tongue in his cheek there.
Yeah.
But Sean's absolutely right that Starmer's replacement will be to the left of the current Prime Minister, because you can't become leader with that electorate unless you're on a left-wing platform, would have thought.
And also, Wes Streeting is tarnished by his relationship with Peter Mandelson. You know, he's a Mandelson protege, and so there's a problem there with someone we would have thought was a reasonable candidate. So it is probably Angela Rayner who is the front runner. If you remember, I once said, though, her lack of judgment is absolutely stupefying. Here is a woman who wore a pair of trousers walking across the lobby of the House of Commons, worth more than the winter fuel allowance that had been denied to pensioners. So I don't think she's got you know, a finger on the pulse sometimes, but it is more likely to be her, I think, than anyone else.
And why would that be? Why is she the front runner, given all of the scandal that surrounds her? Let's not forget she's in exile politically for not having paid stamp duty.
Oh, I think she knows that she can't make a big move until she settled things up with HMRC, but she's thought to have gathered a £1 million war chest in order to fight this battle. And let's face it, Andy Burnham, well, he's out of the picture now. I mean, it might have been a sensible idea to actually put him into the Gorton and Denton by-election, because he's the only person who could conceivably get any sizable votes from the electorate there. But with him out of the way, she's really the only contender.
Now, that's really interesting. So it's great news for her that Burnham's not back in the House of Commons, or won't be anytime soon. What about this issue around her taxes? She's got this £1 million war chest. I'm assuming Labour donors and union backers. The issue that my viewers and listeners have got, Linda, is that if she wins power, they'll be wanting their pound of flesh. That £1 million won't come cheap, will it?
No, not at all. And that is the problem for everyone, because she is backed by those people who will want her to stand firm and not cut benefits. But we know that we have to cut some of those benefits because we're under a great deal of pressure to increase our defence spending. We need to get it at least to 3.5%, and that's a very big deal. We won't be able to do it if we are overspending in other areas of the economy.
Most definitely. The other issue with Rayner is, and I agree with Sean actually, it'll be very entertaining if she becomes Prime Minister. I think the policies will be terrible. She's better at politics than Starmer, isn't she?
Much better. I mean, she's better at politics. She's got the backing of people who are significant in the party. She's actually quite charismatic when you think about it. She's got character.
Well, I think she's Trumpian. I think she's part of the new school of populist politicians. I think she's in that sort of new wave of Farage, of Donald Trump, and I think she fits in that group. And the reason why I would say that, maybe also going back to Boris in the day, because she's quite fearless and no ... are given.
Same as Boris, actually, and this is a cross-party
She's
thing.
the ginger Boris, isn't she?
She's kind of, yeah, because she resonates with the public. She can connect with the public. Whereas you've got Keir Starmer, who is kind of speaking some kind of legalese most of the time, which is completely anodyne and without character. She is able to connect.
And also, I find that when there's a scandal, it's not a scandal for her. And what I mean by that is, and that's the genius of Trump, OK? I know that half my viewers love Donald, half my viewers can't stand him, and listeners. But
that's like Boris, though.
Isn't it? But the amazing thing about Trump is that, you know, even if it's like, I'm going to buy Greenland, the base love it. You know, and I think Angela's like that, where even if something so-called bad has happened, it's not actually bad at all. So an example of that would be when she called Conservatives scum. It only upset those who were not her audience, not her political constituency. But I can assure you that when the Labour membership are thinking about, you know, who replaces Starmer, they'll remember the scum comments and think that's the woman for me.
Yeah, I think that she has the common touch. And she is able to connect with a lot of people. I think that she could easily succeed in this bid for the leadership of the Labour Party. But the danger is, of course, that you keep finding her funny when she could do very serious damage. I mean, even then, when we looked at that shot and she's in the green overcoat and those really dreadful shoes, for those of you listening on the radio, these funny kind of puffy trainers, you know, and you laugh and you think, oh, dreadful. But she's got character. I've remembered that now. I've remembered that shot. I remember that story because of how she appeared to be on screen. And in a way, it's not bad to have that kind of strong personality and strong visual image. It's quite powerful. It's like Boris and the scruffy hair, or Trump and the ginger hair, or...
And maybe even the expensive trousers is a little bit of a flex. It's a bit of kind of, this is the wrong thing, but I'm going to do it anyway, because that's it's almost a show of strength. The issue you've got is that there was a rap sheet against Mandelson when he got the ambassador job, wasn't there, including having resigned from cabinet twice. I think he was exonerated the second time over the Hindu passports, but the first time round he was most certainly found guilty of borrowing money from fellow government minister not declaring it.
You see, what there's a danger here is that you nitpick over bits and pieces, very serious bits and pieces, but we neglect to see the overall feeling in the public now is one of total disgust, not just for this particular scenario, but now for politics in general.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very serious situation.
Well, this is exactly right. Politics is the real loser, not just Starmer, because the public will think, well, we tried the Tories and they were mired in Sleaze, Partygate, all the rest of it. Now we've given Labour a chance, they're mired in Sleaze. Nigel Farage is mentioned in the Epstein files, you know, so you could have a public that ultimately sort of check out when it comes to the entire political establishment.
They just don't believe it. And that did start to happen in the expenses scandal. I'll tell you one other thing that's similar. So I read here on the front page of the I newspaper that the Labour Party are considering sending a delegation of senior female MPs to Downing Street to tell him he must stand down, as Tory men in grey suits told Thatcher in 1990. And remember that during the expenses scandal, who was David Cameron most scared of? He was most scared of the blue rinse ladies in the Witney constituency. That's who he was scared of.
Interesting, isn't it? They were going to take him down. Let's take a little voice note. This is James on the situation facing the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Good morning, Mark. Now, I'm absolutely enraged with Starmer and the Labour government. How is this man still clinging on to power? He should have gone months ago. This man, he is anti-British, hasn't got a backbone. He's an absolute Adios, Starmer. You can take the rest of the lot with you. When are we actually going to have a government that actually care about British citizens? He hasn't said a word about Rhianna White. That breaks my heart. That poor, poor angel looking after that piece of unbelievable. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, mate.
James, a brilliant voice note, and I welcome the strong language because I'm as angry as you are. That's what gets me up in the morning, is to go on the radio and on the telly and call out this awful government and this Prime Minister who definitely gives the impression that he's more focused on the kind of, you know, globalist agenda than the needs of his own people.
But do you know what really makes people fed up is that he is prepared to throw everyone under the bus and not accept responsibility. So everyone, our security services have been criticised, you know, Morgan McSweeney has been blamed. Well, he probably does deserve quite a large portion of the blame. But to keep blaming the security services for somehow not doing direct or develop vetting properly.
He said we need to look at the vetting.
It's ridiculous.
And also a former Director of Public Prosecutions that's very bad at probing people because he sat down with Mandelson and, you know, inquired about his relationship with Epstein, but not very effectively by the looks of it.
No, it's astonishing, really. I mean...
Because isn't it a job of a prosecutor to draw information out of people?
Exactly right. It's a highly skilled job where you draw information out of people. But you didn't need to be James Bond to discover stuff here. I mean, you could get on and do a simple Google search and unearth an awful lot of stuff.
Yes, he's not James Bond, he's Basildon Bond, isn't he? He's Basil Brush, he's Mr. Blobby. I honestly think the country's going to hell in a handcart, and what a brilliant voice note there from James. Might play that later because it was both entertaining and important. Folks, next up, a simple question at 6:49 on Talk Breakfast. Angela Rayner is now in pole position to replace Starmer. But is she unfit for high office? This is Talk Breakfast.
I think they are well aware, the government, of what's going to come out. They're basically stabbing each other in the back at that point because they're more complicit than what people realise. I don't think they want it to come out, and I've heard on the grapevine that the inquiry through the government has fell through, it's collapsed. Yeah, I don't know why they expected us to be comfortable with sitting across from, like you say, former police officers, former social workers, and feeling that comfortability to be able to open up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:51, Talk Breakfast. Nigel in Brighton has messaged the show. Good morning, Mark. I don't agree that Starmer is certain to resign. The main media pack will follow the BBC's lead and move on from the story. The BBC app is already running with a different headline about some nonsense between the US and Iran. We will all be talking about something else by the middle of next week. Contrast this with Partygate. I pulled the BBC headlines from the period and they headlined with different aspects of Partygate for a month. Impartial broadcasting, not credible in my opinion. Congratulations on the audience figures. Nigel, thank you for that. Nigel, I think you raised a good point. The media are more or less on the left politically and they will try to move on from this, exactly like Rachel from Accounts. Do you remember when she misled the public and the press by holding that press conference, giving the impression that the nation's finances were worse than they actually were, rolling the pitch for tax rises? And she knew that that was misinformation and she indulged in it. I thought she was gone. I was on air that week and she survived because of help from the media. Nigel, you raise a good point. Let's take a listen to a voice note from Tristan on the situation of Labour.
The whole Labour Party has got to go. They do nothing for no one, nothing for the British economy, nothing for the British public. Everything they do is for themselves and basically for their voters. Nothing they do is for us at all.
Tristan speaks for many, doesn't he, Linda?
He does. They kind of remind me of Brenda from Bristol.
Yes.
Do you remember the very famous Vox Pop that came up?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what she said.
Not
Oh,
another
no,
one.
not another one. Yeah, that's it. So that's who they remind me of. But I think I don't think the media are particularly going to drop this because I don't think this is a left and right situation. I think there is a general level of disgust, A, in the public, and B, this is a story the public can get their arms around. They can actually research, understand it, talk about it in the pub, you know, talk with their neighbours, etc., etc., go into the ramifications. It's like some kind of huge, ghastly soap opera that is transfixing them. So I think a media outlet that ignores this, ignores it at their peril.
Now, there is a rap sheet against Angela Rayner. It would be odd to replace one Prime Minister over a corruption scandal, to only jump, out of the frying pan into the fire with Rayner. We've got the rather expensive Apple headphones, which went on expenses back in the day. Now, that may sound trivial, but she does enjoy her luxuries, those expensive holidays as well. Where she lived in the 2010s was a bone of contention because it affected the council tax and how much she paid.
Yes, I remember.
And, it seemed like a bit of a fudge on that one. It was a story that the Mail on Sunday pursued enthusiastically for a long time. But it didn't ultimately cost her politically.
And it didn't get legs in the media because it was just that bit too complicated for the media, for the public to get a hold of. This isn't. This is like some kind of Shakespearean tragedy.
Well,
it's everyone can understand it because it's the worst of human values and they understand it when it's put out in front of them.
Well, that's right. And I will say that if there is a leadership election and she's the front runner, they'll be going back to the where did you live in the 2010 story because it's still murky, it's still slightly unresolved. Similarly, she campaigned against right to buy, having sold her council property for a handsome profit. That will come back. Yeah. And then the small matter of not paying her stamp duty, which is, I understand, still owed.
That's the big matter, and it is not. It is still owed, and that is again something people understand. I've just paid my tax.
Bingo.
Everyone else has just paid their tax.
It's early February. We're all skint.
We're all skint. Yeah.
Most definitely. So therefore, is there an argument to be made by her critics and rivals that she's unfit for high office?
You could make that argument, but I don't think that argument will succeed when it comes to selecting her as a leader. And I'm not saying whether she'd be a bad leader or a good leader. I'm simply saying she's likely to be the leader. I think that argument may not succeed.
Is it because tribal loyalties will trump your track record in office? Is it the fact that it's, you know, it's Ange, it's the flame-haired socialist of the soft left? She's a totemic figure within the party with an amazing backstory of single mother, working class, made good. And is it a sense that the tribe will basically fall in behind her, notwithstanding these rather inconvenient
So if you look
facts?
at the debits and credits of the whole situation, it is quite impressive that, you know, at 16 years old, she I think she might have been a little bit older than that, she gets pregnant, she has a baby, she's a single mother. She finds her way to the very top offices in the land, and that's incredible achievement, really. Whatever anyone says about her you know, disastrous misdemeanours, there is another side to her character.
She always seems to sort of come up smiling, doesn't she? For example, the Prime Minister, I think it was previously leader of the party, wasn't he? He tried to sack her, and she wound up with more jobs.
Because she is genuinely thick-skinned.
I thought you were going to say thick, but that might be another story. We'll only find out when she's in number 10. Listen, another concerning story. Young people avoid friendships with those who don't share their politics. This is a worry, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think what happens, I've got 3 children, grown-up, adult children, only one Gen Z.
Gen Z, is it 16 to 24?
Yeah,
because I never know these Gen Zs.
I've got one Gen Z and one on the edge. But I think that kids these days are very polarised, and they're not alone in that. Most of society is becoming very polarised, and that's at the heart of this story. But I think it's much more prevalent in a generation that has grown up with social media, you know, in the digital age, where we're all governed by algorithms and we go that way or we go that way. But it's really, really sad to see that this is happening in friendships. You know, I know from experience that members of my family have had this problem, and it is disastrous. You've got to learn to be tolerant.
Most definitely it is a problem, and you're even going to have it in the dating game, because a lot of women now, young
Especially
women,
the dating
have shifted to the left. And if they think that anyone that's of a conservative bent is evil, well, they're not going to marry them, they're not going to have babies with them. So, you know, where does the whole society's going to grind to a halt?
Years ago, I wrote a column about it was kind of online dating, and I ended up going out to dinner with this guy. It was on the Guardian website, and halfway through the meal, he said, "You know what? I'd go and look on the Telegraph website if I were you."
Wow. Yikes. Well,
There we are.
Isn't that the way of the world? Donald Trump agrees to Chagos plan. A rare bit of good news for the Prime Minister today.
Yes, well, he'll be focusing on that, but it won't be possible, I don't think. This is because we're looking at what the Sunday papers are going to do now, and they will have had teams of people out with fine-tooth combs going through all of this all week long. So, you know, I'm glad that something good has happened about the Chagos disastrous situation, but I don't expect it to bury the Mandelson story.
No, we're going to do first cousin marriages in the next hour. A quick word on that, because it turns out that the NHS have employed people now, a nurse in Bradford, to essentially support this.
Do you know, I cannot believe this, and let me say this very quickly. I did an English language programme, as you may remember, inside some bridging hotels when they evacuated the people off the tarmac at Kabul. So I met many Afghan women, and I remarked to someone, a social worker who was in there, why are there so many children in this hotel with disabilities? And she said it's first cousin marriage. It's a really big problem.
Well, should it be made illegal? I'm delighted to say that Linda Jubilee, one of the finest journalists in the country, stays with us. Keep it Talk Breakfast. More to come.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight, when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite camp. Do you feel safe for her? No, so that will have to stop. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, can't it, that nowadays and age, all what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no!
We would urge her to reconsider, and whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
If you had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, what would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp, we've got...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Past 7, top of the morning, one and all. Happy Friday. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. Let me start with a big thank you to our amazing viewers and listeners. More of you are listening for longer. There is no show without you, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your company. Thank you for your common sense. And we've got a very big 3 hours to come. Breaking this morning, a Prime Minister on the brink, with Labour backbenchers now calling for his resignation. When will we see Cabinet Ministers make their move? It's clearly when, not if, he goes. But amid all of the political drama, there's one group of people who have been forgotten in all of this. The British public, who are living with inflation, who are being laid off from work, who are crippled with ever higher taxes, who face eye-watering energy bills, who feel less safe than ever to walk the streets or own property, and who are dealing with the consequences of open borders. So what's best for Britain? Should Starmer fall on his sword? And here's a question at 4 minutes past 7 in the morning. Will his replacement be even worse? Angela Rayner is the front runner to replace the PM, potentially before or almost definitely after May. But would she be an improvement? Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Derek has messaged the show. Good morning, Derek, and welcome to Talk Breakfast. He says, good morning, Mark. Angela Rayner is unfit for office, as are the entire cabinet. I see no one coming even close to being either fit or capable of doing the job to the required standard that is expected and needed for the job. The whole lot are useless as each other. I just wish the king could intervene and have an election called. Rachel said, good morning, Mark. Angela Rayner as PM, good grief. I'm going back to bed. Wake me up when it's all over. We'll get to more of your messages very shortly. Here's a voice note from Ben on the Ginger Growler, Angela Rayner.
Morning, Mark. Ben from Birmingham. Please don't tell me that
Angela Rayner is going to be our Prime Minister, that foul mouth. Might as well just throw it all in the ring and give the job to Vicky Pollard. That woman is a disgrace, and she would be an absolute embarrassment, especially on the world stage. I dread to think. Great show.
Linda Jubilee, thank you, Ben. Brilliant voice note. Linda Jubilee, broadcaster, journalist, communications consultant. Your reaction now. Ben says she would be an embarrassing Prime Minister.
She's not a natural fit, put it that way. Not on the international stage.
She's not prime ministerial, is she?
No, but you know, sometimes it takes someone who can break the mould, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you actually think back to when Mrs Thatcher took power, she didn't look like a Tory MP. It was enormously hard for her to win selection in Finchley, and she was quite a big character. Just because she's on the other end of this political spectrum doesn't make her, you know, different.
And in 1975, when she got the leadership, Mrs Thatcher was quite shrill. She had a squeaky voice.
Yep. Remember Airy Neve?
And she was out of her depth.
Yeah, Airy Neve, and I can never remember the name of the other politician, but they both encouraged her to have not just media training. I don't think she had much in the way of media training. She had actual voice coaching, as you say, to lower the timbre of her voice. That was very important to convey authority. But what she didn't have, and this has become disastrous in modern day politicians, is too much media training, where they are taught to bridge or pivot away from what they've been asked into what they want to say. And the public has got heartily sick of that response. Margaret Thatcher said what she meant and meant what she said.
Well, let's get the views of Fraser Myers, who's another of my absolute favourite journalists in the country, deputy editor of Spiked Online. Good morning, Fraser.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, listen, it's great to see you. Love Spiked, love the podcast as well. Fraser, can I ask you, is it when, not if now, for Starmer's departure?
Oh, absolutely. This has got to be the beginning of the end. And unfortunately, Starmer is the slowest kid in the class, so he seems to be the only person who hasn't realised that his time is up. And I think that's why he hasn't taken any decisive moves this week. Everyone would be expecting at least a sacking of, say, Morgan McSweeney, who lobbied very hard for Peter Mandelson to have been given the ambassadorial role. But that hasn't happened yet by the time we're speaking. I don't think he realises that he has a lot to do in order just to stay on beyond the May elections. And, you know, that's going to be a bloodbath in the local elections, and also the Scottish elections and the Welsh elections. His position feels untenable now. It's definitely going to be untenable after that. But you can also see why no other Labour leader wants to make a move before those elections, because they don't want to be tainted by that terrible result either. So everyone wants him to go, but no one wants to be the one to make the first move. So the herd hasn't moved yet, unfortunately.
Well, no, that's right. I mean, Linda Jubilee earlier in the studio suggested that, yes, there's a logic to these figures like Rayner and Streeting moving after May, because they don't want, as you say, Fraser, to be tainted by that bloodbath. The only question is whether Starmer can cling on for that long, given the growing scandals engulfing his government.
Well, absolutely. And let's be clear, if things are as they appear, if Mandelson really did share that sensitive market information with a convicted paedophile, as the Epstein file suggests, there is obviously a police investigation ongoing, and we shouldn't want to prejudice that. But if that is the case, this is the biggest political scandal since Profumo. And it's been happening under a government and under a leader who presents himself as whiter than white. He said that he was going to be the one to end Tory sleaze, that there would be no scandals of this nature on his watch. That let's think about, you know, some of the scandals that have brought down, you know, previous prime ministers. If you think that it makes Partygate look like the Tea Party that it really was, a scandal of this nature, and yet Starmer is constantly just deflecting, blaming other people, presenting himself as the victim of Mandelson's lies, even though he had information showing that Mandelson wasn't telling the truth, even though he was fully informed, I think, of Mandelson's wrongdoing. It just doesn't make any sense. I think Starmer, his judgment has been shown to be absolutely appalling, and I can't see a way out of it for him.
Well, it's very interesting, obviously, to watch how it plays out. Is Angela Rayner, do you think, Fraser, the likely replacement?
Well, I think we would normally say that, but she does still have this tax scandal hanging over her, the £40,000 potentially unpaid stamp duty. And it's interesting, just about everyone you think of as the most viable replacement has some sort of black mark against their name. So with Rayner, it's the tax scandal. With Wes Streeting, it's his very close association to Peter Mandelson. He's a Mandelson protege. With someone like Shabana Mahmood, she's quite sensible, and therefore she will never be chosen by Labour MPs and the Labour membership to be leader. So it is hard to see where we go from here. It would be nice, actually, potentially to see maybe a more open leadership contest. Perhaps there are some backbenchers. I doubt it very much, but there might be some backbenchers who are impressive and could really turn things around. I have very small hopes for that. But all of the front runners, I think, are pretty poor. And maybe Labour will even regret getting rid of Starmer. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting, Fraser, because with me in the studio is the broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee. And Linda, with those wishing to evict Keir Starmer from number 10, given that he's more of a centrist figure within the party, is it a case of be careful what you wish for?
A lot of people have been saying that, but I think that he will go, as I said earlier. I think that it will happen, not that quickly, but it could easily happen after the Gorton and Denton by-election. I think that will be a very significant result to watch for. But I think something about Keir Starmer, Harriet Harman actually had it right when she said, the trouble is he's not apologising properly. It's just some form of word salad that he's put together that sounds like an apology. It's not a real apology, and that is the very least that he should do, and that still, I don't think, would be enough. The problem is that Sir Keir Starmer and other people in the Labour leadership, and in fact a lot of politicians, exist in a Westminster bubble where they start to pick over things until they're dealing with the minute detail, and they are not looking at the broad picture of how the general public view this. And that does become important. You know, they often will ignore what polls say, and they'll say the only poll that counts is the general election, etc., etc. But the way people think does count when it comes to this type of issue. When it involves issues of ethics and morality, where people say, I'm struggling to hold it all together, to make the grocery bill every week, to pay for my kids to do X, Y and Z. And meanwhile, I look at this shower of people who are totally letting not just the country down internally, but have made us a laughing stock on the world stage.
And it's interesting, Fraser, isn't it? Because any replacement to Starmer is bound to be to the left of the party, because the electorate that will choose the next Prime Minister are left-wing. Those are Labour backbenchers who refuse the government's rather modest changes to the scope of disability benefits. And it's a membership, many of whom are quite fond of the Green Party these days. They are more left-wing than this incumbent administration. So therefore, if the country does shift to the left under a new Prime Minister, what are the implications, Fraser, for the economy, for taxes, for the debt burden? What are the implications for net zero and illegal immigration, do you think?
Well, I think they're pretty dire, because we've already seen, actually, Keir Starmer being swayed by his more left-wing backbenchers. You know, that has basically put off welfare reform until at least the next Parliament. It means we're certainly going to have net zero until at least the next Parliament, which is absolutely crippling the economy. The report came out recently saying that 400 jobs are being lost a fortnight in Aberdeen alone, in the oil and gas industry. So it is pretty disastrous, unfortunately. And, you know, I have some respect for some figures on the left, but I think they haven't quite updated, they haven't quite noticed what's going on. They haven't quite realised how unsustainable the UK's debt levels are. You know, we're spending more on debt interests than we are on defence and on education. Now, in an alternative universe, I would say 10 years ago, maybe you could have made the case for more borrowing to invest, but we can't afford to do that in this current moment. They've completely missed what has changed. They've missed the fact that welfare is unsustainable. They haven't realised that the reason so many people are claiming benefits is not because there has been actually an explosion in the number of people who are disabled, but because you're allowed to claim for mental health and anxiety. And so they're not living in the real world, unfortunately. And so that is going to be a real problem. It just means many, many more years of drift, many, many more years of trouble, and a much bigger mess for whoever comes in next to clean up.
Now, Linda, the ruthless Prime Minister may fire his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, of course, the architect of his election victory in 2024. And he may fire him for political expediency, but it will come at a price, won't it, for a Prime Minister with no ideas, no philosophy. McSweeney is the brains of the outfit.
Well, I mean, and also suggested by Peter Mandelson, so sooner or later he will have to go. But it's no good sacking an advisor and throwing him under the bus. Heavy the head that wears the crown, frankly. He has to go. But it will be a problem because Morgan McSweeney is an intelligent man. He has devised a campaign.
He's given Starmer all his ideas, hasn't he? I mean, isn't he a bit like Cyrano de Bergerac? He's the one actually saying the words and Starmer acting them out.
Yeah, I mean, and it shows. It's no good. I think that Sir Keir Starmer is kind of acting, and that's what people don't like. What they want, to use an overworked word really, but I still think it's a proper word, they like authenticity. They like someone who stands up in front of them and sounds authentic. And Sir Keir Starmer does not sound authentic. That's partly his delivery, but he could do something about that. But it's also because right from the start, he didn't really have a vision, and without a vision you can't form a strategy, and then you can't deliver it properly. You're always caught out on the hop when you don't firmly believe in what you're talking about. And he's not showing the commitment to any idea because maybe he just doesn't have a central idea.
What does it tell us, Fraser, about Sir Keir Starmer as a politician that he's so dependent, so reliant on his Chief of Staff, not just for practical reasons, but ideologically too?
Well, I think if we've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, Keir Starmer is completely empty. He has no vision, no principles, no policy preferences. And so, yes, he clearly has to look to someone like Morgan McSweeney for guidance. But I think there is a danger of overstating this man's intelligence. There's a lot of, broadsheet press coverage talks of him as some sort of guru, as some sort of genius mastermind. When you think, well, this man is the chief strategist, and his strategy, part of that, was to hire Peter Mandelson and give him, one of the most plummish jobs in the British government, the ambassadorship to Washington. And to not know that this was going to blow up in everyone's face is extraordinary. I mean, the man is literally nicknamed the Prince of Darkness. You could interview people on the street and ask them, what do you think of Peter Mandelson? And they would tell you unanimously, this man is bad news. But perhaps, I don't know, galaxy brain Morgan McSweeney thought this was a genius strategy that was going to, Lord knows what kind of 4D chess he was playing there. But clearly, this element of it has blown up in their face. And yeah, Morgan McSweeney should carry the can for that in some respect. But it's only because Starmer is so empty that he's allowed this to take place. A more authoritative leader would have put his foot down and said, hang on, why are we doing this? This is crazy. This is going to get us into trouble. But Starmer has no political nous, no political knowledge, so he wouldn't have been able to do that, I'm afraid.
Is there any scenario, Linda, in which Starmer surprises everyone and survives?
Well, I was trying to think that through on the way to the studio, and I can't see a scenario where that can happen. But politics is a surprising place. A lot can happen just in, well, we used to say 7 days is a long time in politics, but it's now like 7 minutes. Every time you turn the radio on or the television on, something else appalling has happened. It's hard to see how he could fight his way out of this one. I can't see a scenario where that would happen.
Is there any scenario, Fraser, in which Starmer's replacement, whether it's Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, Wes Streeting, is there any scenario where a new Prime Minister will improve the fortunes of my viewers and listeners and be successful?
I think a new Prime Minister won't improve the fortunes of viewers and listeners, but they could improve the fortunes of the Labour Party. And I think one possibility that I think is under discussed is that Labour sneaks in at the next election via some sort of coalition, potentially a minority government. I think if Labour is able to successfully frame the election as Labour versus Reform, if they are seen as the anti-Reform party, they might pick up a lot of votes. A lot of people might go for that. I mean, it's not my position, just to be clear, but I think there are, I know a lot of people who would be motivated to vote against reform. So there is potential success for the Labour Party. They shouldn't be written off just yet, as empty as they seem to be at the moment. But I do think it's over for Starmer. I can't see a recovery from this particular scandal.
Well, let's take a clip. This is Angela Rayner explaining her career ambitions a year ago.
Absolutely not. And I don't want to be leader of the Labour Party. I'm very happy and honoured to do the job.
What kind of politician are you? You don't want to be leader of your party?
No, I'm very happy and honoured and to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country. And I've got a lot in my entry to prove that I can do the job that I'm doing and deliver on the milestones for the people of this country. That's what I'm interested in, Trevor.
You know this is being recorded, don't you? Because actually, that means one day, if you do, somebody's going to play it back to you.
Absolutely. I'll be happy for you to play it back to me. I have no desire to go for the leadership of the Labour Party. My desire is to deliver for the people of this country who have given me opportunities beyond what I could have dreamed of.
There you go. What does that tell you, Linda Jubilee?
Well, it tells you that most politicians of all sides, regard the truth as a movable feast.
Oh, what a lie. What a lie.
It is so extraordinary that I just don't think that politicians who exist, as I keep saying, it's never changed, exist in the Westminster bubble, seem to think that they can talk without telling the truth. I mean, it is extraordinary, and that phrase, I saw that go out live, that'll come back to haunt her.
It most definitely will. Spiked Online is one of the finest UK newspapers covering all issues around politics and the culture wars. Spiked-online.com. Its deputy editor is Fraser Myers. Fraser, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks to Fraser Myers and our incredible guest in the studio, the broadcaster, communications consultant and journalist, Linda Jubilee. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Watch this space, more to come. Would Angela Rayner be a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? Here's a voice note from Bridget.
It's Bridget in France here. Angela Rayner, Mark, my God, is that really all we've got? Look at the state of her, and that's going to be on the world stage with other leaders. That's what's going to represent the British people. I think things might not be great in France at the moment, but I'm staying here and I will not be returning under a socialist government, Mark. Anyway, have a great day. Bye for now.
Bridget, thank you for that. My acid test is when Britain's got good enough policies that Bridget returns from France to live in this country, because we miss you, Bridget, and we miss people of your calibre. Of course, don't forget the wealth creators are currently running for the hills. 16,000 millionaires in a year. It's really, really worrying. But folks, next up, Angela Rayner. Would she be better than Starmer? This is Talk Breakfast.
welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sleaze, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I thought...
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Many people are mystified that first cousin marriage is actually legal in this country. The NHS have had leaflets talking about the great benefits of first cousin marriage, which leads to deformed babies. It's cruel, it's immoral, it's insanity. It's only woke political correctness that makes it permissible in this country. It should be illegal. Surely that is clear. Let's take a listen to a voice note on that subject from Andy.
Good morning, Mark. Great show. Andy from Hull here. So just on first cousin marriages, so if you insist on marrying your cousin and having kids with a distinctly higher possibility of the kids having disabilities that are going to cost the NHS a huge amount of money, shouldn't those people be forced to pay like an NHS levy for each kid that they knowingly have, that may knowingly be disabled? Because it ain't fair on the rest of us, is it?
Well, definitely. I tell you what, though, I love that voice note, Andy. That levy, which is a great idea, won't even touch the sides, because it could be that a child with a disability as a result of first cousin marriage could cost the NHS millions. As one person could cost the NHS millions in social care, medical treatment, and much besides. It's completely wild, isn't it? What about Angela Rayner? If she becomes Prime Minister, what happens to illegal immigration? Tom Jones is the deputy online editor at The Critic. He's also a Conservative councillor for Scotton and Lower Wensleydale. Good morning, Tom.
Morning.
You do have to wonder, don't you, whether with a Prime Minister on the brink, that our borders policy could be affected as well.
Yeah, I think that's a real concern, actually. You know, for all that Keir Starmer has said and done, he has actually set out a fairly clear policy around the border. If you look at most of the other contenders, not just Rayner but Streeting, it's not quite clear what they do on the border. The presumption is that Streeting, because he would be supported by Shabana Mahmood, would probably be fairly tough, probably as tough as Starmer, if not tougher. But Rayner, being on the soft left of the party, we have absolutely no idea.
No, and the issue you've got is that Starmer's replacement will likely be from the left of the party, won't it? Because that is the political philosophy of those backbenchers and the party members. They're more left-wing, so they are unlikely to choose someone like Streeting. If they shift left in office, that's got implications for issues like illegal immigration.
Yes, hugely.
Because the political will won't be there to stop the boats, will it?
No. Well, the will's not there to stop the boats anyway, Mark. I think Labour are in a really difficult position with the boats. It's a problem they really don't want to have. And so they've kind of... they're in an interesting position in terms of triangulation. What they're doing is a degree of performative toughness, I would say, whilst actually making it much easier. They're basically trying to solve the small boats crisis by making legal migration and legalisation of illegal immigrants much easier, whilst doing performative toughness. You've seen things like they've got a new TikTok account, the ridiculous Shabana Mahmood proposals about taking people's valuables, which, you know, frankly wouldn't even cover a week. And so what they're doing is basically they are being very tough on illegal migration, and that's a triangulation that's acceptable to the left of the party because it's about smashing the gangs.
Yeah.
this big, nasty other problem that they have, but then that basically allows them to not deal with the real pull factors, which are, an overly generous settlement for new arrivals.
It's hard to imagine, in the absence of somebody like Wes Streeting, that Starmer's replacement will preside over anything other than more illegal immigration. I think we've had 70,000 people enter the country illegally since the Prime Minister became Prime Minister. That number could rise under, for example, Prime Minister Rayner.
Yes, absolutely. And there's potential for legal migration to increase as well, particularly if people pick up the old economic arguments that have been thoroughly debunked, obviously, about legal migration being economic rocket fuel. I think one of the other things is the government have just released their numbers of deportations, and that's 60,000 illegal migrants and convicted criminals have been removed since Labour came into power. That's a 45% increase on the 18 months prior. That's actually, to be fair to Labour, that's quite an impressive figure. It's massaged slightly because Labour have started including voluntary returns, which wasn't previously done. But the fact is that non-voluntary returns have spiked under Labour as well. You do have to give them credit for that. And you would expect that to cease as well, particularly given the optics around what we're seeing with Trump, the Trump administration in Minneapolis.
And briefly, Tom, the French Navy have been held responsible as an inquiry brands the Channel disaster, I think it was 2021, that killed 27 migrants as avoidable. And this is something that, the left didn't get the memo about, which is that the illegal crossings in the Channel are also a humanitarian catastrophe, and that's another reason why we've got to stop the boats.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a £7 million inquiry that blamed systemic failures, missed opportunities, chronic staff shortages. Part of the reason they blamed the French Navy, I think, was that the French Navy were on the same radio channel as the boat, and so the boat that sank, and so the boat that sank couldn't radio for help. But, given the extraordinary danger of these crossings, 162 people have died in the Channel since these boats started coming over. Given the sheer natural danger of this crossing, I don't really think any of the institutions here are to blame. There are going to be people that die in the Channel because it's, by its very nature, it's such a dangerous thing. And the only way to deal with this, frankly, is to deal with the pull factors that are bringing these people here in the first place.
Oh, common sense times 100. Tom, lovely to meet you for the first time. I hope this is the first of many on-air encounters. Tom Jones is the Deputy Online Editor at the brilliant newspaper, website, magazine, of course, The Critic. He's also a Conservative councillor at Scotland and Lower Wensleydale. Thank you, Tom. We'll catch up soon. Have an excellent Friday. Paul's in Tyneside in the northeast.
Hiya.
Happy Friday,
Hiya,
Paul.
Mark. Yeah, happy Friday to you, mate. Just with regards to Starmer, I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think he is going to dig his heels in, because what you have there is you've got an absolute pure narcissist. No matter what he does, no matter what he says, he believes in himself. And when you've got that mixed with a Fabian, that is it. He's in there. He will not go unless something massively comes out on this inquiry, and he will drag that on. I think, and when he does, I believe that he will call a general election rather than let anybody else have it.
Paul, you raise a very good point about the Prime Minister, because it's my view that he's incompetent, he's dishonest, he's out of his depth, he's got no principle. But there is one thing we do know about him, Paul, one positive attribute: the guy is ruthless.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Angela Rayner, he got that knife in his front by her. For no other reason than she knew she could do it. I don't think, she'll come anywhere near. She'll probably go for the race. Yeah, he is ruthless. The fact that he appointed Mandelson, and the fact that he stood there at the podium and he apologised He used the word, I apologise, twice, but he didn't actually apologise for what he was questioned on. Did you get that?
You're so right. It was very clever how he worded it. Sorry, not sorry was the message.
Yeah. And when you do that, there's people out there who will actually just catch on to the apologise bit. Oh, he said sorry.
That's the headline.
That's all right.
You're right. He said, you're so right, because it's a bit like, Paul, if somebody says, oh, I'm sorry if you were offended, it's not the same as I'm sorry for what I said. And what he said is, I'm sorry for that I was lied to, rather than I'm actually sorry for my terrible judgment.
Absolutely. And Mandelson, he's been there twice before, and now he's on the third. Now he's out for the third time. Hopefully, never to be seen again, apart from in court. But we're still stuck with Starmer. And I'll be honest with you, if you look across the bench, he's probably, unfortunately, the better of the lot of them, because at least that's the devil we know.
Paul, what a brilliant call! You've spoken a lot of sense. Paul in Tyneside says Starmer is going nowhere, and at the end of that call he says, be careful what you wish for, because his replacement could be worse. Paul, call me again soon. What a brilliant conversation. Matt Vickers is the Shadow Home Office Minister and the Conservative MP for Stockton West. Good morning, Mr Vickers.
Good morning.
Well, what do they say about the art of war? Don't interrupt your enemy while they're destroying themselves.
They're going for it at the moment. I mean, the reality is it's just a sad situation, isn't it? We've got a Prime Minister who is in office but not governing anything. The country is unhappy. His own backbenchers are unhappy. The idea that somebody who's got links to the upper echelons of the Labour Party can just get away with anything, no questions asked. Whatever the vetting came in, these things are checked out. They look at what these background checks that go in. If you're linked to the upper echelons of the Labour Party, then Keir Starmer turns a blind eye. He overlooks your links to some of the most vile, disgusting, depraved individuals around. And then it isn't the last one. We've now got a pattern of behaviour emerging. We've got all this stuff going on with Mandelson. We've now got Matthew Doyle, former head of communications for Starmer, appointed to the Lords, despite the fact he had links to a guy who was charged with similar, child sexual offences, worst of the worst. Another blind eye turned. Kemi's calling him out now. She says he's got to put forward all the documents that he's seen. It becomes very clear that he knew what was going on. He knew about these links these people had, yet still went ahead anyway. Completely unacceptable.
Well, I'm salivating at the idea of Prime Minister's questions featuring the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, and Prime Minister Angela Rayner. Sparks will fly if that happens, won't they?
I think it'll be very entertaining. I think, the guy has completely lost control of his own government. There is no wonder that we've got to the point where people are looking at who comes next. But I think the guy there from Tyneside, in the northeast, the sound people who've got good views on the world.
Yeah.
Everything that comes next is probably equally terrifying. I don't think the Labour Party has anything better to offer. Whether it be Wes Streeting, who's also up to his neck in links with Peter Mandelson, whether it's Angela Rayner, I'll leave the public to make their own views known on what Angela Rayner as a Prime Minister would mean for this country, or Ed Miliband, Mr Net Zero in there. It's not looking good for this country at the moment.
Well, Paul raised another really good point. I've got to say, Matt, my caller to the show from Tyneside, when he suggested be careful what you wish for in regard to a Starmer replacement. Starmer, more of a centrist figure within the party. Any replacement for the Prime Minister is going to be to the left, aren't they? And that's going to be an issue for our economy, for our borders, for net zero and much besides.
I mean, we say about Starmer as a centrist, he's still a massive lefty. Look at what he's doing to our economy. Anybody who goes out there, works hard, does the right thing, is being taxed to death. Anybody who doesn't work is getting more and more and more in benefits. Those people who try to create businesses, create jobs, they're all being absolutely battered by this government. He is driving our economy off a cliff edge. 21% more people unemployed. Businesses going at the wall. Business is going to the wall at the fastest rate since the world economic crash. He is a big lefty. He's destroying our economy. The people of this country have lost all confidence in him. And this latest scandal, this latest in a long stream of scandals, is doing nothing for any confidence anybody might have in this government.
Does it help the Conservative opposition if he goes?
I think, do you know what? He's got to go. It's in the interest of the country. Regardless of politics now, the fact that this man has dragged our economy through the dirt, has dragged this country through the dirt. His own backbenchers aren't confident. We aren't confident. He is no longer running the country. He might be the Prime Minister. He's no longer running the country.
Is it not dangerous for you to call for him to go, given that his replacement will likely be even more left-wing?
I think the damage that's being done to this country means we need rid of him. We need somebody who is actually running the country.
Well, does that make Rayner or Streeting better?
Well, he is in office, but he's not in power. I don't think any of the options are good, but we can't go on like this. The government is completely, it's like a shopping trolley with 3 wheels. It's flapping around all over the place. It's not governing. It's not making any decisions. He can't get any, I mean, what are we up to, the 15th U-turn?
But is that you taking Rayner or Miliband over Starmer? Because surely that's going to be worse for my viewers and listeners.
What we want to be taking is Kemi Badenoch as the next Prime Minister. But the reality is, I don't think it can get much worse than it already is. The government has completely lost its way. Our economy is being trashed.
Okay.
Our country is being trashed. He's got to go.
And Matt, briefly, while I've got you, is it slightly irritating? Does it stick in the craw for you that Prime Minister Boris Johnson got dog's abuse for standing near a glass of orange juice during the pandemic? Meanwhile, Starmer clings on with a genuine corruption scandal.
This is scandal number, well, I don't know how many we're up to now. We've got homeless ministers who make people homeless. We've got a corruption minister who's been, done for corruption. We've now got this links, not just links to people who made mistakes. You've got an ambassador to the US. The Prime Minister appointed him despite knowing his links to some of the most evil, vile, depraved people on earth. This is completely, his judgment is there is nothing there to be had anymore. He's beyond the pale. He's got to go.
Matt Vickers, thank you so much for your time on a Friday morning. Matt Vickers is the Shadow Home Office Minister and Conservative MP for Stockton West. Will Starmer's replacement be worse? This is Talk Breakfast. It is 7:42.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So many messages coming through at 7:44 Talk Breakfast. This from Margaret in Norfolk. The country forgot how the last Labour government tanked the economy last time they were in power. That's why the Tories were in power for 14 years. This Labour government is going further and faster, finding new depths to tank the economy. The brakes are off. And Pat says, good morning, Mark. I think Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's chief of staff, should stay exactly where he is. He's doing a brilliant job of bringing down this sleazy, corrupt government. And Sarah in Plymouth says, good morning, Mark. I think Angela Rayner would be a fantastic leader of the Labour Party. Why? Her being leader would guarantee that Labour will be out of office for even longer. Bring it on. I'll get to more of your thoughts in just a moment. But first, a voice note from Laura on the prospect of Prime Minister Angela Rayner.
Morning, Mark. Laura from London. Angela Rayner as the new Prime Minister? My goodness. Whether it's Angela, whether it's Miliband, whether it's Lammy, whoever coming from that party, have achieved the absolute square root of nothing in their career. They have no credibility. They have no leadership skills. They obviously don't understand the economy. So how can any of them be suitable to lead this country? Thanks, Mark.
I can't disagree with a word of that. Brilliant voice note. Thank you, Laura. Keep them coming. 03444991000. Now, Labour grandee Harriet Harman has criticised the appointment of Peter Mandelson to this very significant diplomatic role. She is pointing out the fact that his nickname was the Prince of Darkness, which could conceivably be a slight red flag. Take a listen.
And to say he lied to me makes it look weak and naive and gullible. The Keir Starmer that I knew of, I didn't know him personally very well, but I knew of him when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. And if you'd asked me what he stood for, I would have said standing up for human rights, standing up for victims, standing up for women and girls, standing up for decency and honesty. That's what I would have said. And yet he seems to have drifted so far away from those values in appointing Peter Mandelson to be the UK's representative in the US. Now, Peter Mandelson was called the Prince of Darkness.
Well, there you go. A damning intervention on the part of Labour Party grandee Harriet Harman. Look, let's get reaction now from two very good friends of mine at 7:47 now on Talk Breakfast. Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, and Paul Embry, trade unionist and author. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Paul, let me start with you. Is it a case of when, not if, Starmer goes, do you think?
Well, I'm one of the very many people called Paul, so I'm assuming you mean me. But
yes, sorry, it's a very good point. Paul Richards, PR, what do you think?
The third Paul in a row. No, it's not. I think Starmer needs to just bed in and get on with changing the country. That's what he was elected to do. And I think people are, this is a very exciting story. We're all gripped by the magnitude of it. Is it Profumo or bigger? But honestly, yesterday we had the cancer plan. We had the Pride in Place announcement putting money into town centres. These are the things that actually the Labour government was elected to do. And my plea would be for everyone just to heads down and get on with the job. There's an inquiry into what actually happened in this ridiculous situation of Mandelson being appointed, and that will get out all the truth about who knew what and when. In the meantime, let's just get things better for the country.
Well, the Mandelson story, Paul Richards, relates to the Prime Minister's judgment, doesn't it? This is the Prime Minister that, at the last count, has been responsible for 15 U-turns, the lowest poll ratings since records began, and the appointment of someone to the country's most important diplomatic role that he knew had a friendship with a convicted paedophile. That's why he's got to go, isn't it?
Well, you say U-turns, but I mean helping pubs and making the burden less on farmers for their inheritance tax. I mean, these are things that you would welcome, surely. So, it's a good idea to listen.
Well, isn't that like somebody that's burgled your? Isn't that like someone that's burgled your house, then putting a fiver through the letterbox?
Not really, no. I think it's actually helping people through the cost of living crisis. And the thing about all the speculation about leadership is, of course, there is no obvious candidate waiting in the wings, unlike there was when I was in government, where we had Gordon Brown, obviously the person that would replace Tony eventually. In this case, we got Shabana, we got Wes, we got Angela, we got Ed Miliband, we got somebody perhaps from the hard left, you've got Andy Burnham as the king over the water. You can name 5-6 people straight off the bat. So Labour MPs are not going to want a leadership contest where the chances are they won't get the leader that they themselves actually want.
Paul, you're a man of...
why he's probably going to stay put.
You're a man of huge intellect and experience and wisdom. How are you taking...
There's a butt coming here,
There's
isn't there?
definitely... It's actually the mother of all butts, let me tell you. It's a bigger butt than Beyonce's, and that's politically incorrect, and I don't care. So, Paul Richards, so you know your onions politically, and we've been broadcasting together for a number of years. Why are you taking a bullet for this man that is doing so much damage to the party that you love, the election victory and a mandate that you fought so hard for? Surely, as someone that is passionate about the Labour project to improve the country, you'd want him to go, given the fact that inflation is almost double the Bank of England's target, which is really bad news for working people. Unemployment's going up, the debt is high, the borders have never been more open. Starmer's got to go to rescue the Labour project.
Well, my answer to that is simple, that when you observed what happens with the Conservatives in that last government, the idea that you simply swap out the leader and put a fresh face in number 10, and somehow that just absolutely solves all of the problems.
It was amazing. When they brought Rishi Sunak in, it was a triumph. By the time he left office, we had the highest growth in the G7 and we had inflation at 2%. We were flying!
Well, we've got the highest G7 growth under this government, and, we just had the Bank of England stabilise interest rates yesterday, so the economy is not doing as badly as you're painting there, and there are glimmers of hope in there. Okay. And I think a leadership contest would throw all that up in the air, create chaos on the markets. Great for journalists like you, Mark, but terrible for the country.
Paul Embury, trade unionist and author. Lovely to see you as well, Paul. Richards is in denial, isn't he?
Well, I respect Paul's opinion, of course, but the reality is, Mark...
There's another butt coming there, isn't there?
The mother of all butts. It's bigger than Kim Kardashian's, this one.
Yeah, exactly. This is bigger than your butt, if I may say so, Mark. But the reality is that the Mandelson affair is, whether we like it or not, I think one of the biggest political scandals in modern history, and we just can't get away from that. You had a situation where somebody who was effectively the Deputy Prime Minister at the time during a very serious financial crisis was found to be leaking highly confidential and market-sensitive information to a financier friend, a very rich financier friend, and a convicted child sex offender by that point, by the way, and also a friend who had personally been bankrolling him and his partner, and at the same time appears to have been advising that the CEO of the foreign investment bank should threaten his own chancellor during that financial crisis. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. And as much as we would like to see it as a distraction, it isn't a distraction. Unfortunately, it is a self-inflicted wound, and the government is now going to have to deal with the fallout from it.
Although I got a call from so many Pauls on today's show, Paul Embury, and it was Paul in Tyneside, who said, be careful what you wish for, because Starmer's replacement will be more left-wing. What do you think about that?
Well, in some respects, I have to say, as an old-fashioned socialist and trade unionist, I wouldn't necessarily mind that. I certainly think there's a case to argue that we should be more left-wing on the economy. I think that Rachel Reeves' decision to follow Treasury orthodoxy, essentially for me, it's like having George Osborne back in the Treasury. And if we're serious about getting growth, we do have to ask government to use its massive fiscal capacity to invest in industry, to invest in infrastructure, to create full employment and so on.
Where is this wonderful fiscal power that you speak about, given the fact that the cost of servicing our debt is £100 billion a year alone?
Well, there's many things that a currency issuing nation may be short of. Market may be short of land, it may be short of resources, it may be short of skills, it may be short of machinery. There's no reason really for it to be short of money. And actually, when you look at the history of both this country and the Western world, particularly when you go back to the 1930s, for example, we learnt then that you can't cut your way to growth and that you can't cut your way away from a flatlining economy. And if you're serious about achieving growth, you can't just hand it over to the market and say, you get on and do it. You have to expect government to step up. But just on the point about who will lead, I mean, you need a leader who will appeal to the country, not just someone who appeals to the Labour Party. I completely accept the argument that you can't just have someone who indulges the wishes of the Labour Party. You need someone who's going to appeal to the country. For me, I think the only person who comes near that is Shabana Mahmood. And if it ever came to a leadership election, I would like to see her stand.
Well, she'd be the best of a bad lot in my view. I think she's unfortunately too right-wing for that electorate, Paul Embury. But what about that suggestion from Paul Embury, Paul Richards, that actually we should replace Starmer and get somebody in that is a proper socialist so you can have a genuine progressive agenda?
Well, I mean, he's not calling for a return to Corbynism, is he? I mean, none of us want that. So it depends what you mean by left. I mean, I do buy the point he made about growth. This government will be utterly judged on its ability to grow the economy. And so far, it's been sclerotic at best. So, some dramatic interventions that can stimulate growth using investment in infrastructure, for example, getting all those houses built and so on, I think is a good idea. But I return to my theme, Mark, if you just sort of have a 3-month leadership contest where the Labour Party is divided over 5 different candidates and endless rounds of voting and intrigue and, smoke-filled rooms and all of that, the country will be revolted by it and just frankly think, well, what on earth are you lot doing in Westminster when our town centres are corroding and we haven't got any money in our pockets? So I think, focusing on the day job is the most important thing. And you said, why do I support Starmer? I didn't actually vote for him to be the leader of the Labour Party. I voted for Lisa Nandy because I thought she'd be quite good. But, he's doing, I think, since then, a decent job. And he's obviously a decent man. And that is why he is so furious at having been lied to by Mandelson and all of the rest of it. And that's why he's called for an inquiry. So we can find out who knew what and what the email said, and we can see the extent of Mr. Mandelson's lying.
So things are good under Starmer. Unemployment up from the Party of Working People. Turns out they're not working. Taxes up, debt up, cost of government borrowing up. Unemployment makes an unwelcome return. Growth down. The Bank of England have just downgraded our growth for the next 2 years. When are things going to get better, Paul Richards?
Growth isn't down.
Well, of course it is. I mean, it's basically barely 1%.
Well, that's up then, isn't it? And then also
it's lower than it was under Rishi Sunak.
We saw the Bank of England stabilise interest rates yesterday and keep them
stabilised.
I think that's the 6th, time where that hasn't gone up. So that's been good news for homeowners. But, we know there's a cost of living crisis. I'm not pretending everything's marvellous, but I am saying it would be a lot worse with the instability of a leadership contest or, heaven forfend, the return of a Conservative government who tanked the economy. I mean, Matt Vickers there laughing his way through that interview. He was in that government that caused all that terrible disquiet and, disruption. And, of course, they got booted out for it only 2 years ago. So, a return to all of that, I think, is something the country needs like a hole in the head.
Well, listen, I've been in a Paul sandwich and I've loved every second of it, including the big buts. Gentlemen, I hope you'll join me again soon. A very interesting conversation. Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, and Paul Embry, trade unionist and author. The author of an excellent book called Despised, Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class. Your reaction, please. Here's a voice note from Mark.
From Langford. I just don't know what's wrong with these people you're getting on your show that have got huge intellect, political expertise, and they all still back Keir Starmer. Where do they live? I mean, I can't. I'm baffled by their stupidity. I don't know. I'm done.
Paul, you've got me banged to rights there. It's true. I mean, Paul is a knowledgeable guy. He's got a brain. But where is it, as you say, if he's backing Starmer? But will his replacement be worse? This is Talk Breakfast.
This is the Political Asylum, current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
We're with you every weekday night, Monday to Friday, 7 until 10 p.m, right here on Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
.803. Well, happy Friday, one and all. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. With more people listening for longer, two big words this morning. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining our common sense revolution. And breaking this morning, a Prime Minister on the brink, with Labour backbenchers calling for his resignation. But the question is, when will Cabinet Ministers make their move? It's clearly not if, but when he goes. And amid all of the political drama, there's one group of people who have been completely forgotten in all of this, the British public, who are living with inflation, who are being laid off from work, who are crippled with ever higher taxes, eye-watering energy bills, who feel less safe than ever to walk the streets or to own property. The people that have been forgotten are the public, who are dealing with the consequences of open borders. So should Starmer fall on his sword? And my question to you at 8:04 on a Friday morning, will his replacement be worse? Is it a case of be careful what you wish for? It's all about your opinions. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can also leave us a voice note as well. What do you think about the idea of Prime Minister Angela Rayner? Would she make things better for Alarm Clock Britain? Let me know your thoughts. You can hear us on the radio, of course, with our massive growing audience. You can also watch the show. Just head to YouTube and search Talk. And up we pop, as the saying goes. Let's talk. And Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister, is the odds-on favourite to replace Keir Starmer. Let's get a reaction. Here's a voice note from Steve.
Angela Rayner for Prime Minister? Absolutely not. Before the Labour Party came to power, Angela Rayner was the MP for the area I live in, and she did nothing for us, absolutely nothing. She favoured the Muslim population. She held office in one of their mosques most of the time. It was ridiculous, mate. And now she's in power, and that stupid speech she made about no ambitions of being Prime Minister, she lies through her teeth.
Well, thank you for a powerful voice note there, Steve. That's not a vote of confidence in Angela Rayner. Sean says, Mark, I think Starmer will cling on just long enough to unnecessarily surrender the Chagos Islands. Sean, I'm very nervous about that. You've raised a brilliant point. I think Starmer knows it's over. Did you see his hands shaking at the dispatch box the other day? This guy is out of control. He's in a very dark place, and he's not that stupid that he doesn't realise his days are numbered, and therefore what he'll be looking for is a legacy. And I think originally it was digital ID, but now it's going to be Chagos and some other horrendous surrender of our sovereignty. He'll be looking for a legacy, and it's bound to be one that we don't want for this country. Anne Marie says, great head-to-head with two Labours, the two Pauls. Paul Richards had his head in the sand, whilst Embury was honest and realistic about the depth and impact of the Mandelson scandal. And Jane says, why, oh why do these people keep backing Starmer and co? It makes my blood boil. Never mind them picking a new leader. It should be us who vote a new leader in. Jane, thank you for that. Let's get reaction now from one of the biggest names in politics, former Home Office Minister and now Reform UK supporter Anne Widdecombe. Good morning, Anne.
Thank you.
Notwithstanding the current challenges facing the Prime Minister, is a desire for his replacement something we should be careful what we wish for?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. If it were to be Angela Rayner, that would simply make Britain a joke. But what would not be a joke would be what she would do to the country with her very, very anti-employer views, her strong views that workers should have every last right and every last rise, regardless of what that does to business. she would be a disaster. So yes, we should be very, very careful what we wish for. But on the other hand, I can't imagine that anybody in this country is wishing to have Keir Starmer for another 3 years.
In regards to the Prime Minister's appointment of Lord Mandelson to this very key diplomatic role of UK ambassador to the United States, can you think of a scandal of this scale in recent political memory, Anne?
No, you've got to go back to Profumo to get there, I think. No, I can't. And I'm rather baffled by the whole thing because maybe Mandelson could pull the wool over Starmer's eyes, but the security services must have known. Of course they must have known. And it's very difficult to understand how this came about.
Well, indeed. And at the heart of this is a Prime Minister with a consistently poor judgment, Anne.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and a very weak Prime Minister. And bear in mind, it's less than 2 years since the last general election. You know, it is amazing that he should have fallen apart so quickly. Indeed, it started to happen within weeks, not even within months.
Most definitely. He's out of his depth, isn't he?
Oh, he's completely out of his depth. He's never shown any sign, literally, since he was elected as Prime Minister. He hasn't shown any sign of ever having his head above water. I don't think he is in control of anything. He's not in control of his own party. He's not in control of his own appointments. He makes a mess of them. It's sad in a way, but on the other hand, it's the country that's suffering.
And is it when, not if, he goes now?
I think it must be. I think the only thing that would... I don't think he'll go before the May elections. I think it would be suicidal for the Labour Party. It already is, really, but suicidal for the Labour Party to be engaged in internecine warfare right up until the local elections. But after that, I think members of particularly the Parliamentary Labour Party, they will be asking themselves, you know, if we go on with this man, what is the outcome going to be? But as I say, be careful what you wish for. It could be Angela Rayner, and that would be worse, quite honestly. That would be worse. I know it's difficult to believe it, but it would be.
Well, it's hard to imagine that a figure like Wes Streeting or Shabana Mahmood would win with that very left-wing electorate of the Labour backbenchers and the party membership.
And the trade unions. I mean, that is absolutely true, but Keir Starmer used to be regarded as a moderate. You know, he was elected, and they eventually elected Blair after a very long period of electoral oblivion. So they do, from time to time, come to their senses. But at the moment, I think they're all at 6s and 7s.
And therefore, Angela Rayner brings some allure, doesn't she? She's a darling of the so-called soft left, and we need to rephrase soft left. They're anything but soft, Anne. They are hard left.
They're hard left, and she is hard left. And there's no question at all of... I mean, soft left is akin to the Liberals. These people are very, very hard left. Angela Rayner has pitched for that vote, for the hard left vote. She will undeniably be a candidate when the time comes, and there is a real risk that she could win.
Well, that's exactly right. Now, when you say things will get worse under Angela Rayner, I think we need to wargame what her premiership might look like, Anne, because it's not fantasy politics. I think it's the most likely outcome, given her backstory, given her popularity within the party movement. So if she becomes Prime Minister, what happens, for example, to the economy?
Well, what happens to the economy is there will be enormous public sector pay rises, because she has always backed pay rises as opposed to restraint.
Because she's in the pocket of the unions.
Well, because she also, and she believes it. I mean, she really does believe that workers' rights come first, and that includes pay rises, that workers' rights come first, and that everything else somehow will muddle along. Well, you know, life isn't actually like that, and I think it would be a terrible mess. I also seriously can't see her representing Britain on the world stage. I mean, can you?
I think it would be embarrassing. And also, Anne, I'm just wondering about illegal immigration under Angela Rayner. Given that she's from the left of the party, there will be no political will to stop the boats.
I think her only problem there would be that there is a growing frustration in the Labour Party ranks and I mean in the country as well as in Parliament, with the way that immigration is dominating the agenda and they're not getting on top of it. So she might find it a bit more difficult to brush that under the carpet.
And stay with us. Georgina is in London. Good morning, Georgina.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Anne. Lovely to see you again.
You too, Georgina. Is it when, not if, Starmer goes?
Absolutely. I mean, I watched him. This man fight for his political life yet again, and it's utterly embarrassing watching him giving a speech that's in total contradiction with all that he truly stands for. His apology must have stuck in his throat like a shard of glass, Mark, but it cuts no ice with the British people because he has financially crippled the hard-working, tax-paying people in this country. He most certainly can't plead plausible deniability, as he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He's too much of a stickler for detail not to do his due diligence, and he is no paragon of virtue despite what he would like us all to think. With great power comes great responsibility, Mark, but the flip side of that being the final responsibility must always be taken by the person in charge, and that's Keir Starmer. I don't think that I'm the only one taking maybe just a tad of enjoyment watching Keir Starmer squirm as he loses his grip on both his power and his dictatorship. And no doubt he will throw Morgan McSweeney to the wolves as a sacrificial lamb to save his own skin. But how dare he apologise to the victims of the heinous crimes committed by those powerful men, Epstein's friends, when he himself has failed abysmally to protect them and hundreds of thousands of young girls who've been and are still being abused within our own realm. Keir Starmer's admission that he knew that Mandelson had a close friendship with Epstein, the prolific pedophile, before he yet again put Mandelson in a position of power, signs the death knell on Starmer's premiership. He was well aware of Mandelson's dealings, and he knew Mandelson's character, as he'd been caught out twice previously and had had a substantial six-figure payout from the public purse for both his treachery and his deceit. And we most certainly knew that this man was a danger to international and national security, as his love for money has always outweighed his love for our country. If Starmer wants to see an even greater risk to our national or international security, he need only look in a mirror, Mark. There's no coming back for Keir Starmer, and the vultures are already circling. All those involved, Starmer, Hermer, Brown, Blair, McSweeney and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, must be questioned by an independent body, and they must not be allowed to mark their own homework on this occasion. Total transparency must be the end result of this investigation, so we know exactly what went on. But I do worry what's to come with regards to the future leadership of this disgraceful political party. But as far as I'm concerned, Mark, Keir Starmer is now napalm to the tinderbox that is the Labour Party, and he must resign.
Wow, Georgina, thank you for a very powerful call. And here is the Prime Minister at a press conference yesterday explaining the background to his appointment of Lord Mandelson as UK Ambassador to the United States.
Before he was appointed Ambassador, Mandelson was asked directly about the nature of his relationship with Epstein. He was asked whether he had stayed at Epstein after his conviction. He was asked whether he had accepted gifts and hospitality, about whether he had been fully transparent about the relationship. He portrayed Epstein as someone he barely knew. And when that became clear, and it was not true, I sacked him.
Well, there you go. Are you convinced by that defence, Anne Widdecombe?
Well, hardly, and the way he says at the end, as if he's being, really strong and emphatic, I sacked him. By that stage, he had absolutely no choice, and he knows it. So it was pretty pathetic. But as I said to you earlier on, the security services must have known the depths, if they wouldn't know all the detail, but the depths of that relationship. And it was an appointment that should never, ever have been risked. And I don't understand why it was risked for this reason. Trump is pretty unpredictable and he's pretty capricious about, policies. And you actually need, in those circumstances, given that he is the leader of the Western world, You do actually need, in those circumstances, somebody who knows absolutely what they're doing, and that points to a very senior career diplomat. Why Mandelson was ever appointed, I mean, forget all the other stuff and who knew what, forget that. Why was Mandelson ever appointed, even if he'd been purer than pure and whiter than white? Why was he ever appointed in the first place? I don't get it.
And Anne, you're a practicing Christian. There is a moral dimension to this story, isn't there? Because at the heart of this are young women that were trafficked for sex.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are the victims in all of this. Now, it wouldn't have been any different if Mandelson had not been friends with Epstein. They would still have been trafficked for sex. But I need a lot of convincing that somebody who's as sharp as Mandelson is, and he is sharp, I need a lot of convincing that he didn't know what was going on.
And what about Sir Keir Starmer's concern for the victims of Epstein's crimes? Is that not a little rich? As touched on briefly by Georgina there, this is the same Prime Minister that has continually resisted having a national inquiry into the rape gangs.
Exactly. So, I mean, the two do not sit easily together. I do believe that Keir Starmer will have sympathy with the victims of Epstein. I mean, I'm not going to paint Keir Starmer as, as dark and evil. I don't think he is. I think he's just a natural messer up. And he's done it big time on this occasion.
Most definitely. And have you spent time with Peter Mandelson? What do you know of him?
Hardly anything at all. Obviously, we overlapped in Parliament. He was then the architect of New Labour. Do you remember Blair saying, I don't know what I have to do to get my party to love Peter Mandelson?
Yes.
Because he did believe in things like, a lot of money and all the rest of it. A lot of the Labour Party simply didn't like it. But he was one of the major architects of New Labour. He was, if you remember at the time, their spin master. And I remember people in the party saying to me, where's our Peter Mandelson? Why haven't we got a spin master? And I did actually say at the time, quick, show me who he is and I'll get rid of him now.
Well, exactly, because Anne, given the fact that he brought spin to this country, that's another egregious degree of damage that he's wreaked on Britain. Peter Mandelson is part of the rather poisonous, toxic political atmosphere in which we now inhabit. If he invented spin, he's got a case to answer.
He invented spin. Well, he certainly took spin to heights.
Specialised in it, yeah.
Specialised in spin. Yes, even if he didn't invent it. But he also, of course, don't forget the things that happened when that Labour administration came in. The civil service was virtually politicised. Press officers were politicised. And it was a very, very different sort of Britain by the time they finished from how it had been at the start. So I think Mandelson has to answer for an awful lot. But again, forget Epstein, forget all the rest of it. This man had already made two massive, I wouldn't even call them blunders because they were wrongdoings in office. He had already had to resign twice. Why on earth? What was the big merit of Mandelson that made Starmer take this risk?
And Anne, before I let you go, crystal ball time. Is it likely now that Angela Rayner enters number 10 by late summer of this year?
It's certainly a strong possibility. If the Labour Party has any sense of self-preservation, it won't let that happen. But just look at the Labour Party at the moment and ask yourself, do they have that sense?
Anne, always a privilege to have you on the show. Look forward to speaking soon. Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister and now Reform UK supporter. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Coming up, I've got an extraordinary story. It's a Talk exclusive. Criminals in jail have received millions of quid's worth of compensation. You couldn't make it up. Plus, will Starmer's replacement be worse? It is 8:22. This is Talk Breakfast.
This is the Political Asylum, current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
We're with you every weekday night, Monday to Friday, 7 until 10 p.m, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Complete disaster at 8:25 on a Friday morning. I've been into the Talk Radio kitchen, which I've got to say needs a deep clean and should be fumigated. And I blame predominantly Peter Cardwell. But I've been drinking decaf all morning by accident. You ever had that where you get tea bags and it looks like PG Tips and it's decaf? But luckily, I'm so fired up about the big stories of the day that I don't need caffeine. And neither does Jay, who's left a voice note about Angela Rayner potentially becoming our next Prime Minister.
Morning, guys. Great show as always. So if Angela Rayner is very keen to get Labour popular again and, you know, the people on the fence that vote Labour back on side, she's got to come in and announce straight away that anyone coming here illegally will be deported to the country they come from. We'll return the boats around. Within the next 12 months, we'll have every hotel cleared out and put that money back into the UK economy, into education, into defence. You know, it's costing a lot of money to house these people. So the people here are suffering, of all nationalities, you know, not just British. Everyone that lives here is suffering from that point of view. And also I'd recommend that, you know, she starts getting tough and, you know, cracks down, lets the police crack down on the law and street crime and problems like this. That'll get them popular.
Well, Jay, if only we can but dream. Imagine if she came in, old Angela Rayner, and said, you know something, I'm going to stop those boats, I'm going to cut taxes, we're going to have national income, we're going to save the pubs, we're going to look after the farmers, we're going to let pensioners warm their homes over the winter. We can but dream. I fear it won't come from this Prime Minister. Now at 8:27, a Talk exclusive. Taxpayers have forked out nearly £1 million to prisoners who were illegally held behind bars beyond their lawful release dates. Figures exposed by this network reveal that 214 inmates were wrongly detained over the last 4 years, triggering compensation payouts totalling just under £1 million big ones. Let's get reaction now from Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, and Mark Fairhurst, National Chairman of the Prison Officers Association. Mark, I'll start with you. Oh dear, the prison authorities can't win, can they? First of all, they get dogs abuse for letting people out early by accident, and now they're in trouble for keeping them in too long.
Yeah, that's right. It's not a good look for the service, is it? But it comes as no surprise. Let's not forget that these are small units that calculate people's sentences with the most lowly paid staff who are ill-trained, under an immense amount of pressure, because over the last 12 months, we've had several early release schemes, which means that tens of thousands of sentences have to be recalculated, and sometimes human error does occur. But hopefully with the latest announcement from the government that they're going to invest in modern technology and increase our resource, we can eradicate these mistakes.
I mean, Elliot Keck, this looks like the mother of all mess-ups, doesn't it?
Good morning, Mark. Yes, I mean, the prison service can't seem to get anything right over the last year. On the one hand, they're releasing people like Hadish Kabatu far too early, someone convicted of rape, of course, and now, of course, keeping prisoners in for longer than their sentences should demand. I would very much like to see people kept in prison for much longer than we currently do, but of course, if their sentences gives them a particular release date, then that release date has to be followed, and they do deserve compensation if they're kept in for longer than that. But listen, when you think how much money this country wastes on, you know, things like EDI rolls and foreign aid, you do wonder if maybe we could use some of that cash to invest in the prison service to ensure that some of these errors don't happen.
Well, that's the painful truth, isn't it, Mark Fairhurst, is for the prison service to work, it's going to take resource, it's going to take money.
It is, and unfortunately, successive governments, it's not just the last government who put us through austerity measures over the last 14 years and absolutely decimated us. Successive governments have failed to invest in the prison service because, quite simply, prisons are not vote winners. But let's not forget that 99.9% of prisoners who get released will be living in our communities, could be our neighbours. So we want them coming out with hope rather than fighting against the system.
Mark, you know about how it works within prisons. Is it not possible for somebody that's been detained beyond their sentence to sort of speak up about it? Is there no procedure where they can speak to a prison officer and say, listen, I know I did that armed burglary, but I'm due out now?
Yeah, we quite often get that. And when we make inquiries to the admin block, they suddenly look into it and find that either they've got the wrong dates for the release from the courts, so that's where it first starts, or they've miscalculated someone's sentence, because certainly over the last 6 months, I can think of at least 3 schemes where prisoners have been released early. That changes the criteria, and we've got these small admin hubs who have to recalculate everybody's sentence in a prison, not just 1 or 2. We're talking about thousands and countrywide, tens of thousands. So inevitably, when it's all a paper trail and we haven't got modern systems and artificial intelligence to assist us, there will be human error, and that's down to a lack of investment. This lies with the government, not with the poor staff who are tasked with unmanageable workloads.
And Elliot, is there an argument that we shouldn't be paying out to these criminals? Clearly they've outstayed their welcome in jail, but do you think we should look at how the law works, that I don't know what sort of mitigation there could be, but handing them money just doesn't feel right and is going to certainly anger plenty of people watching and listening to this show?
Well, listen, as I said, I would like to see most people sent to prison for far longer. I think sentences in this country are far too lenient. I think, listen, I think it's worth looking at the procedures. If people are only let out, and the date is only wrong by a few days, and I think probably compensation isn't necessary. But, ultimately, if you're kept in prison for weeks or months longer than you're supposed to be, and your sentence handed down by a jury of your peers and by a judge has advised and has legislated for, then I think, I don't think there is any argument that people shouldn't be compensated. Ultimately, they are being held in prison wrongly and with no cause at that point. So I do think the compensation isn't necessary. What we need to do is to ensure that we stop making these mistakes in the first place. And, when you look at, what Mark mentioned, failure to invest and low-grade administrative officers making mistakes, and certainly TVA research shows that our civil service has become a lot more top-heavy in recent years. We've been investing far more in higher-grade officials and people at the top of the pile, and we're spending much less money at people lower down the ranks, i.e. people in particular working in prison. So one of the things we need to move back towards is towards a delivery-focused, Whitehall delivery-focused civil service, rather than these policy and communication roles that at the moment are dominant.
And Mark, it's very clear that if we had better prisons, we would have a safer country.
We would if we didn't have such overcrowding in our prisons, if we had activity spaces for everyone so we could educate them or give them vocational skills. We could have better citizens who we release. And that's the crux of this matter.
It's a false economy, isn't it? It's a false economy cutting the prison's budget. We pay the price in the end.
We do, because crime costs tens of billions of pounds, which could be reinvested into modern prisons, where we give people activities that they can take into our communities and hopefully turn their lives around and get a job and pay tax and national insurance.
And you don't mean Sky TV and Netflix. You're talking about, arithmetic lessons, reading, writing, filling out a CV, that kind of stuff.
Well, when you look at Lord Timpson and this government who announced that we want to rehabilitate people and we're going to invest in vocational skills, you have to ask them, why have they cut the education budget by 25%? If we want to educate people and give them skills, life skills and vocational skills, why are we cutting the budgets? There's not enough activity spaces for everyone. That's why there's so much crime when people are released, because there's nothing for them to do and there's no hope.
And Mark, briefly, the Tories failed on this. Labour are not delivering. Do you have any hope that a future administration can rescue our prison service?
Oh, I always have hope. If they listen to the voice of the front line, which is the POA, we can do so much better. So I always have hope.
Yeah. Have you looked at Reform's offer? What do you think of what they're proposing?
Well, we're still waiting for them to contact us, but we've got a few asks of our own before we back any political party. We are a politically neutral trade union, but we want to lower our retirement age, increase our salaries to attract the right people into the job, modernise our entire prison system, and we want our industrial rights back. We haven't got the right to strike.
Brilliant. Elliot, last word on all of this.
I'm not convinced that prison officers should be given the right to strike, but certainly I think as I said, we need to look at Whitehall once again. I think we're investing far too much on busybody pen pushers at the top of the civil service, and I don't think we're focusing enough on those lower down the pecking order roles that actually are far more important to taxpayers and far more important to your viewers.
Gentlemen, thank you for your valuable time. Elliot Keck is the head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, and Mark Fairhurst, national chairman of the Prison Officers Association. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for these criminals, Christian, to spend another couple of days in clink and have a think about their crimes and atone for what they've done and have a few more bowls of porridge. Although they don't get porridge these days, they get avocado on toast, don't they, with a poached egg as they sit down and watch these women and chill out whilst you and I work hard contributing to the British economy. Listen, folks, so much more to come. Let's take a voice note from Darren. Earlier I spoke to Labour insider Paul Richards, and here is a voice note with Darren reacting.
Morning, Mark. Darren from Warsaw. Up and out at work, 5:30, and already I've got my head in my hands. That Paul Richards. So basically what he's saying is we've got to keep a man who lies to us on a daily basis, gaslights us, is absolutely destroying the country, because the economy is in the bin, despite what Paul Richards tells us. We've got to keep him in position because we don't want to see a Labour leadership contest for 3 months. Well, I'd welcome it, because I'm thinking for that 3 months, they might be destroying themselves and not the country.
Darren, thank you for that. Your head is in your hands and I can't blame you. Darren, by the way, gets up early in the morning. He is part of Alarm Clock Britain, puts a shift in, puts in more than he takes out, believes you should work. But the message from those who govern us is why bother? Will that change under Prime Minister Angela Rayner? What do you think about that? Just wrap your head around that, because it's now likely that she will enter number 10 in the late summer of this year. Your reaction, please. 0344 499 1000 8:36. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, what about that? The prospect of Angela Rayner entering number 10 in the late summer of this year. Harvey says, good morning, Mark. Great show. How is Angela Rayner in the conversation to become PM? She wasn't fit enough to be in office as the Housing Secretary following her stamp duty scandal. And surely as Deputy PM, when Mandelson was appointed, she was briefed on the vetting of his history. Good point. Bill in Cheshire. How to choose a Labour leader? How about all the candidates competing in a non-stop TV broadcasted lie-a-thon? Last person lying wins. Keith in Oswestry. Good morning, Mark. There's only one way to prove if Angela Rayner would be good for Alarm Clock Britain, and that's to have a general election. We'll get some more of your feedback shortly. Let's take a voice note from Sarah.
Morning, Mark. Great show. I was just listening to your conversation with one of your callers, and it was brilliant because the chap said, he doesn't think Starmer's going anywhere. And I happen to agree. I think he'll cling on to the absolute bitter end. And the question is, do we want him to go anywhere? Because who on earth are we going to get in replacement? I mean, if we get Angela Rayner, God's sake, she hasn't even paid her tax bill. How can somebody like that legally and morally run the country? Utterly, that would be an utter disgrace.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. A very well put set of points. Let's reflect further on this developing situation in the company of Conservative peer and leading pollster Lord Hayward. Good morning, Lord Hayward.
Good morning.
Well, you won't have specific polling about the possible candidacy of Angela Rayner entering number 10 in the late summer of this year, but it's quite clear, is it not, that Sir Keir Starmer's days are numbered, and we've seen that prior to this Mandelson scandal.
I think you have to be cautious about that. Politicians of all political persuasions have the capacity to stay on longer than many people expect. There is no doubt that Keir Starmer is in extreme difficulties at the moment, and the fact that the Labour Party, you as journalists, etc., are casting around in one direction or other to see who might be the alternative is an indication of the scale of the problem that Keir Starmer is in. But what we'll see over the next few days is the MPs, Labour MPs, going back to their constituencies, discussing matters, moving away from the Westminster bubble. And then the first clear next step will be next Monday, Tuesday, as people return with a sense of what the state of play is.
If you look at low economic growth, the growing cost of the debt and the cost of government borrowing, clearly a lot of the policies have failed. In particular, those two disastrous budgets, Lord Hayward. But notwithstanding policy issues and many U-turns, it seems that Sir Keir Starmer just isn't very good at politics either.
Please call me Robert, by the way. But no, Keir Starmer is notable in that he is not a natural politician. He spent his whole time outside politics until he came into Parliament, involved in the law in one form or another. He could, and I've actually thought the case would be that rather than being forced out, he would actually choose a decision at some point just to say, I didn't want this isn't my natural media, I want to go away and I'll leave it to other people to become, or another person to become a Prime Minister. So I think it is quite possible that he might walk away. He might walk away now. He might do so after the Gorton and Denton by-election if that goes wrong, or alternatively after the May the 7th elections. And there are many people in the Labour Party who thought that the summer would be the crunch time for him. But you're right. He's had it's not just the failing figures that you identified, it's the chronic series of U-turns which this government has had, which the vast majority of voters actually associate him with, whether it's winter fuel or you just go on down the list.
Most definitely. You mentioned that he might fall on his sword. Could he go the other way and dig in? Could he threaten to call a general election if there's a move against him?
Oh, that's always the tactic of a Prime Minister who is in real difficulties. He or she and their supporters turn round and say, well, if you don't like me, we'll call a general election, in the full knowledge that large numbers of Labour MPs would lose their seats, having only just won them some almost a year and a half ago. So that's the threat of a really failing politician. And the moment you hear that, you know that they're in really serious trouble.
Indeed. Now, 50%, over half of Brits do want the Prime Minister to quit. And this is across the political spectrum, isn't it? Lots of those Labour voters with significant buyer's regret now, Roberts.
Absolutely. And when you say over half the voters, it's worth bearing in mind that a quarter of the voters, roughly, actually said they don't know. So the ratio of those who have a view is stark, and it's 2-1 against Keir Starmer staying as Prime Minister. Having said that, what is interesting about the poll that you're quoting from, is that roughly in the case of Labour voters, they are split 1-for-1. Those who want to see him go are matched roughly by those who don't. What, of course, we don't know amongst those who don't want him to go, although is why they don't want him to go. It may be that their alternative isn't available, that they can't see an alternative. So there may be a myriad of reasons why people don't want him to go at this particular point. But it is striking that the public in general have made up their mind. They want him to go and they'd like him to go now. What I think we will see over the next few days is actually, I think those figures will harden.
No potential leaders, potential replacements to Starmer would want to be in post prior to the May local elections bloodbath, would they?
They wouldn't mind if they've got the role of leader. What they can then say is, well, that's all to do with the voters' decisions about the previous Prime Minister, the previous leadership. So it would be written in to taking on the role. And in many ways, that would probably be an ideal state of play for them.
Would the whole cabinet change if a new Prime Minister entered number 10, do you think, Robert?
No, that's a decision for an incoming Prime Minister. Any incoming Prime Minister can say, I want to change a lot of roles, or I don't want to change a lot of roles. It's actually bad for government to change too many roles of ministers, because a minister takes a long time to get a grip on the department. And I, as a cynic, believe that you do actually need a minister to be there for a long time, because otherwise you're run by the civil service, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, an even more risky position. So it's it's up to the Prime Minister, but I would recommend that they don't actually change that many ministerial positions if it should happen.
Particularly in the Home Office, I would suggest, Robert. Can I ask you about any future potential leadership elections? Sadly, my viewers and listeners won't have a say. And the constituency is a very left-wing one, isn't it? Those backbenchers, of course, resisted quite modest reforms to the scope and scale of welfare benefits in relation to disabled people. The grassroots are on the left as well. So any replacement to the Prime Minister is probably going to be to the left of him, would you say?
It's likely, but having said that, there have been the Labour Party, rather like the Conservative Party in the middle of its troubles a few years ago, has lost large numbers of its members. And many of the people who've left the Labour Party are actually on the left, and they've gone off and joined your party, Jeremy Corbyn's team, or alternatively the Greens, or just dropped out of politics as well. So it is likely that they'd be more left-wing inclined, but I think there's a fair amount of clear evidence that actually the left have probably moved on to other parties in many ways, in many cases.
What could happen to the economy under a more left-wing Prime Minister, though, Lord Hayward, if it was Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, or someone of their ilk from the so-called soft left of the party? What might the implications for the economy be, do you think?
You're asking somebody who's very much on the right when it comes to the economy. As far as I'm concerned, the results would be disastrous.
Well, the bond markets won't wear it, will they?
There is every possibility that the city would probably stop some of the more extreme measures, but we're already facing a real set of problems. The growth for the economy was downgraded yesterday by the Bank of England. Joblessness is rising. There are all sorts of problems associated with the economy. And as I say, the risk of a further drift to the left, expressing a personal view here, would be even greater.
Robert, a pleasure to have you on the show. Very much enjoyed our conversation. Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative peer and leading pollster. What do you think about the idea of Prime Minister Angela Rayner? Would Starmer's replacement be worse? Here is a voice note from Phil.
Morning, Mark. Love the show, mate. It's Phil in Nottingham. I'm a little bit gutted that Keir Starmer's going to lose his job. And one of the reasons is Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday he actually answered a question. So when Kemi Badenoch asked him about did he know his relationship with Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, and he said yes. And it's like, that's the first time in 18 months that he's actually answered a question. And now we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah, you raise a very good point. Phil, excellent voice note. So much more to come. This is Talk Breakfast. It is 8:49. Angela Rayner, Prime Minister. Be afraid, be very afraid. This is Talk Breakfast.
Cannot for the life of me understand why Peter Mandelson was appointed as the US ambassador. It didn't make any sense. It's almost a sort of legacy of this Blairite cancer. That period and those four men, Blair, Brown, Campbellson and Mandelson, are responsible largely for the destruction of Britain over the last 25 years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast at 8:52. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Dolan's Dispatch coming in just 10 minutes' time, and I'll be dealing with Starmer in no uncertain terms. This from an unnamed texter. Good morning, Mark. Doesn't Angela Rayner realise that being PM is very taxing? How will she cope? What a brilliant point. Get some more of your thoughts on that shortly. Here's a voice note from Danny on Starmer.
Morning, Mark. Danny the window cleaner in North Devon here. I'd like to have been prosecuted by Keir Starmer when he was a barrister. Did you do it? No. OK, then.
Just outstanding. Danny, golden, and we needed a smile on a Friday morning. Not just a smile, by the way, but a very, very good point indeed. Shall we have a bit of sport?
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
And I'm delighted to welcome Chelsea FC reporter at The Sun newspaper, Lloyd Canfield. Good morning, Lloyd.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Listen, what are the big sports stories of the day for you?
The one on the front page this morning is that Kai Rooney has been offered a deal by Man United. And if he goes on to be anything like his dad there, he's going to be a pretty special player.
Well, that's right. And football is not really like showbiz. You can't have nepotism. If the lad can't kick a ball, he's not going to be picked by a club like United, is he?
Yeah, generally in the Premier League especially, you know, some of these players, maybe they get somewhere because they are, like you said, a bit of nepotism, but in the Premier League, that doesn't cut it. You're not going to make it if you're not good enough.
No, it's quite something. Do you know much about his talents? What's he good at? Is he a striker like his dad, do you know?
From what I've heard, he's a very, very good player. I've not actually seen him play myself, but I've got a very good colleague who covers Man United, and she says he's absolutely excellent.
Wow.
He is supposed to be a bit like his dad, similar in terms of profile, position, and Man United as a youth team have not been overly successful of late, but they're really coming back, and they've got a really good group of young players. Him, Michael Carrick's son, Darren Fletcher's sons as well. They've all been a really big part of bringing United back to where they should be.
I'm trying to think of footballers who had famous dads that were also very successful in the game. There's not too many, are there? I'm thinking Lampard, Frank Lampard and his father.
Yeah.
Was it Frank Sr.?
Yeah, Frank Sr.
But there's not too many examples of that kind of football dynasty, is there?
There's not loads. There's a few, generally the ones you would know, kind of their dads are not as successful or vice versa. Obviously, you've got David Beckham, his sons didn't go on to make it. Eden Hazard's parents were both footballers. Neither of them were particularly well known. But yeah, it's tough to really be either live up to the expectations of your parents or that of your children.
Now, I've got a lot of friends, Lloyd, in the East Midlands and in Leicester. It's a very, very special football club, and they've got a big headache, haven't they, facing them? This is quite serious. What's happened?
Yeah, Leicester's probably the closest big team to where I live, so they have been hit with a points deduction. They've escaped a few points deductions over the years for some of their financial fair play matters, but really it's a sad situation because, you know, just almost a decade ago, if not a decade ago now, they were Premier League champions. They're a brilliant club. They're a nice family club, a family-orientated club, and to see them now potentially fighting relegation is tough to watch, but at the end of the day, if you don't play by the rules, you're going to get punished.
Well, Lloyd, there you go. And what about that Carabao Cup? A bit of drama regarding Arsenal and Chelsea. What happened?
Yeah, so basically before the game, the Arsenal players were warming up and Liam Rosenior, the Chelsea boss, felt that they were encroaching on the Chelsea half where Chelsea should be warming up. And then yesterday in his press conference, he reflected on some pretty vile language that he used towards the Arsenal players in the warm-up, saying that he felt disrespected in that moment, that he doesn't have a problem with Arsenal, he doesn't have a problem with Arteta. He just felt in that moment they really crossed the line, literally. Well,
there you go. And listen, Lloyd, basically the league is won, isn't it? Arsenal are champions or elect?
Well, we've thought the league has been won with Arsenal before, and then it turns out that it wasn't, so it's too early to really say that Arsenal have definitely won it, but they're certainly favourites. And if I was putting money on someone, unfortunately for me, it would have to be Arsenal, yeah.
Well, there you go. I share your pain. Lloyd, we'll catch up soon. Enjoy a big weekend of sport. Of course, The Sun, #1 for football coverage. Lloyd Canfield is the Chelsea FC reporter at The Sun newspaper. Will Starmer's replacement be worse? It's an important question that we have to answer. I think it's, 95% certain that he'll be out later in the year. Here's a voice note from Nick.
Good morning, Mark. It's Nick from Loughborough. We're in for a rare old ride now because when Starmer does fall, and fall he will, we'll have the hard left, as if Starmer isn't left enough, but we will have the even harder left in charge of the country, and their mission will be to burn the house down in order to impose their twisted ideologies on this nation before they're finally kicked out of office at the next election. It's got to be all about damage limitation now for us. We've got to hope that they don't last till for the next 3 years, but while they are running, whoever's running it, whether it be Miliband or Rayner, they are going to leave a scorched earth behind them, and they don't care.
Well, Nick, I am very, very concerned about what might happen if Starmer is replaced. I think it may be a case of be careful what you wish for. Someone's going to come in, as you said, from the left of the party, which is going to mean more tax, more inflation-busting pay rises in the public sector, more crippling red tape and bureaucracy for business it's really, really worrying. And I think it could precipitate an economic crash. At which point, as you say, Nick, you've still got a governing party with a majority. Do they do an emergency socialist budget? Be afraid, be very afraid. By the way, the confirmed candidates for the by-election in Greater Manchester are as follows: Nick Buckley, Advance UK; Charlotte Cadden, Tories; Dan Clark, Libertarian; Matt Goodwin, Reform; Sebastian Moore, Social Democratic Party; Joseph Omicha, Rejoin EU; Jackie Pearcey, Lib Dem; Hannah Spencer, Greens; Angeliki Stoja, Labour; Hugo Wills, Communist League; and Sir Oinkalot, Monster Raving Loony Party. I wonder whether Sir Oinkalot, will he throw his hat? Dolan's Dispatch in a couple of minutes' time. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.903. Top of the morning, a happy Friday, one and all. This is Talk Breakfast with more people listening and for longer. 2 words from me. Thank you. There is no Talk Breakfast. There is no talk without you, the audience. You can listen on the radio, DAB+, in-app and online. You can watch the show. We are a TV network as well. Just head to YouTube, search Talk and up we pop. And breaking this morning, a Prime Minister on the brink, with Labour backbenchers calling for his resignation. So when will we see Cabinet Ministers make their move? It's clearly when, not if, he goes. But with the likes of Angela Rayner plotting a political coup, will Starmer's replacement be worse? My phone number is 03444991000. You can call right now, book your place on the show. Tommy is taking your calls. He's on great form this morning. And I'm delighted to say directing our TV output is the fabulous Nehar. And in charge, the boss, as always, the one and only Christian Mitchell. And our lead engineer, the man that makes me sound this good, is Big Sam. So I've got the dream team, but I can't do it without you. What do you think? Will Starmer's be replacement? Will he be worse? Will she be worse? It's likely to be Angela Rayner. What do you think about Prime Minister Angela Rayner? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. And we kick off, as always, at this time every Friday, Saturday and Sunday with Dolan's Dispatch. This isn't about Peter Mandelson. This is about the worst Prime Minister in 100 years. Someone in Sir Keir Starmer that entered politics with no plan, no philosophy, no ideas, no integrity and zero judgment. Mr. Blobby would be better suited to high office than this shameless charlatan who's been horribly out of his depth since day one. What's he responsible for? Well, making everything worse. An abortive tax on farmers, a war on pubs, a war on working people with the national insurance tax raid, a war on business with red tape and bureaucracy, the Chagos Islands giveaway, the salami slicing of Brexit, the punishment of pensioners as they shivered in their homes over winter, and a government so ridden in sleaze, it makes the last Tory government look like the Vienna Boys Choir. A corruption minister done for corruption, a transport minister done for alleged fraud, a homelessness minister that makes her own tenants homeless, a housing secretary who evades stamp duty. And we still don't know quite where Angela Rayner was living in the 2010s when she was juggling her council tax liabilities. This is a Prime Minister in Sir Keir Starmer who has cancelled elections, who is plotting the scrapping of jury trials, and who fought unsuccessfully to roll out illiberal, sinister and Orwellian digital ID. This is a Prime Minister that called those concerned about the consequences of mass immigration far right. A man who takes the knee to the latest woke cause, who doesn't know what a woman is, even though he's married to one. A Prime Minister who placates Muslim extremists, including when he forgot to wear his poppy when addressing British Muslims over Remembrance Weekend. The rap sheet against Keir Starmer is as long as your arm. And then there is Mandelson, someone that Starmer knew was friends with a paedophile when appointing him to the biggest diplomatic role in the country, UK ambassador to the United States. But who could be surprised? Because this is a Prime Minister with no backbone, no common sense, no scruples, no judgment and zero moral code. Don't forget it was Starmer who was the greediest politician in the House of Commons in 2024, having accrued freebies of over £100,000. This is a multi-millionaire ex-lawyer who allowed a rich Labour donor to pay for his suits, to pay for his glasses, to pay for his tickets to Taylor Swift, and to pay for his tickets to the Arsenal. Well, what an Arsenal he's turned out to be. The Mandelson saga is just another nail in his coffin and another clear demonstration of his lack of character and his political ineptitude. By every metric, he's the worst Prime Minister in living memory. Unemployment up, inflation up, debt up, borrowing up, illegal immigration through the roof. So he's got to go, and he's got to go now. Even Larry, the Downing Street cat, wants to see the back of him. It's time this pussy was chucked out of number 10. 9:08, it's Talk Breakfast. Edwina Currie is a former government minister, best-selling author and broadcaster. Good morning, Edwina.
Good morning. Oh, I love you, Mark Dolan. I love listening to your monologues. You're absolutely spot on, and you express it so beautifully.
Well, you're very kind, and half the time I'll get it wrong, Edwina, but I'm like you. I say what I think. I've got a degree of common sense, and let's see how that is judged by history. What are your thoughts about the Prime Minister's situation? You're no stranger to political scandal and intrigue. Is it when, not if, he goes now?
Yes, I think so. And in fact, you've outlined extremely well exactly why that's the case. If Starmer's history up to this point, apart from appointing Peter Mandelson, was a record of tremendous success, and he was doing really well, and he'd been ahead in the polls and so on, then appointing Peter Mandelson could be taken, as Starmer wants it to be, as an aberration, as a mistake, as something completely different from the way he's behaved before. But in fact, his ineptness and incompetence, I think, is very much on show. And his speech yesterday at that press conference I listened to him for is cringeworthy, because what he set out was who he thinks he is. He thinks he's a good guy. You know, I'm a lovely person. I'm a moral person. I came into politics for all the right reasons. How could I possibly make a mistake? It must be because somebody else has lied to me. And you think, oh, for heaven's sake, what is it about this man, Peter Mandelson's been sacked by 2 prime ministers? The odds are that you'll have to sack him as well. What is it that this man, it appears in all the information about Epstein as a close friend over many decades? There's more information coming out. What are the odds that he's going to be in there, and it's going to be deeper and it's going to be nastier? You know, you have to think ahead. If you're a minister, if you're in charge of something, you always have to ask, all right, now what can go wrong? And I suspect what happened in this case was that Peter came forward the moment Trump was elected and said, I'm your man. I'm your man. I know all these people. I have an extensive and slightly shady contacts book. And I've been in the same room as Trump lots and lots of times. And you know he's very dodgy. Well, I'm very dodgy too, and I can handle all that, and I'll do it for the sake of the country. All you have to do is pay me and make me UK ambassador to the United States. And Starmer's kind of looked at the 2 pages of vetting and said, you know, have you still got friendship with Jeffrey Epstein? And the true answer is no, he's been dead since 2019, but don't have a look at what was happening 10 years before. And he said, all right, you're in. And it proves to the world that Starmer is an idiot, an absolute idiot. And that's the person we've got running the country at the moment.
Well, that's the irony and the tragedy for the Prime Minister, is he's the author of his own downfall. He shot himself in the foot so many times, picking fights, for example, with farmers that he wasn't going to win. He's had to U-turn on that. Digital ID, that's a hot mess of a policy, dead on arrival. The list is endless of the U-turns, and his political judgment has let him down on multiple occasions.
He doesn't have any political judgment. He's a lawyer. And he's not just any kind of lawyer, he's a human rights lawyer, which means that most of what he was doing in his career was going into courts with rather sympathetic judges, backed by rather sympathetic people like Lord Harmer, who is also in government with him now, and arguing the case on the minutiae and the nitty-gritty of this bit of legislation that wasn't well drafted, or that bit that could be interpreted differently, or what the European Convention on Human Rights said in the 1950s, and winning these cases, sometimes actually doing prosecutions when he was DPP as well, of people who didn't deserve to be prosecuted, like some of our soldiers in Northern Ireland, for example, who did their duty as well as they possibly could. Now, he's not been a man who, like me and like many people in politics, have gone into a room full of 1,000 people who don't agree with you and persuaded them that your point of view is right. He's never had to come up against real discussion, real debate. It hasn't worked like that for him. And so in the House of Commons and as leader, he doesn't interrogate the information. You know, what is it about don't touch Mandelson with a barge pole that you didn't get, Keir? I mean, my anxiety now is very similar to yours. what happens next, who is going to take over. It's not going to be this week. It could well be after the Gorton and Denton by-election on February 26th. The sixth safest Labour seat in the country, where I suspect that Labour might welcome almost bottom of the poll. I mean, there's lots of, as you've just read out, lots of candidates. Wouldn't it be nice if the Monsaluni party actually won it? That would be a real smack in the eye for everybody. That's not completely impossible. Most Labour voters in that seat, who are decent people, will simply stay home. So the turnout's going to be much lower, even in the general election, where it didn't even reach 50%. At that point, Starmer is very vulnerable. But come the local elections in May, right through the country, Labour is going to do extremely badly, and thousands of Labour councillors are going to lose their seats. At that point, I think he's a goner.
Well, I've always thought, as a keen student of political history, Edwina, that the great talent, the great gift of the Conservatives as a movement is they tended to elect prime ministers rather than leaders that they ideologically cared for. And I've always thought Labour were the opposite. They went for the likes of Michael Foot, who was a great standard bearer for the socialist cause but was never going to win power. Do you think that'll happen again if Starmer goes? Do you think they'll choose someone they love rather than thinking with their head, not their heart?
I think an awful lot of it depends on how many of the backbenchers really give consideration to do they want to get re-elected. If they elect a left-winger, you're absolutely right. If they elect Angela Rayner, who knows what else might come out about her personal financial benefits, shall we say. I mean, she's turned into a whopping great capitalist. That's the only thing you can say in her favour. She's trying to make money left, right and centre and avoid tax. But how many times has she made speeches saying how wicked that was? So she is one massive hypocrite, absolutely massive, and very vulnerable to being undermined on that sort of basis, especially if more actually comes out. You know, when you're in the public eye that much, there will be a lot of digging as to exactly what she might or might not have been doing, and how on earth somebody on a basic parliamentary salary could afford an £800,000 flat. On top of everything else. So she's quite vulnerable, and they should be aware of that. And if she is acting in a left-wing fashion, Labour will lose the next election. Wes Streeting is keeping his head down. I rather rate him. I think he's doing a good job on the health service. If he keeps his head down, he could well be the one after that. But you know what? These scandals, these failures are so complete that sometimes the party can't be rescued, and the next general election is actually not that far away now.
When you say not that far away, do you think it will go to the full term under any leader?
Oh, yes, I think so. It's strong governments like Margaret Thatcher's in the 1980s that are riding high in the polls that will go a little early, that will go, say, 4 years instead of 5. It's weak governments, knowing that they're down in the polls and that they're very likely to lose, and that will last to the very last minute. John Majors is the obvious one, going right to the wire in 1997. So we will see. But my guess is we've got another at least 2 years of this government, but possibly under a different Prime Minister.
Well, if Angela Rayner does get the top job, what are the prospects for the country, Edwina? What are the prospects for our energy policy? What are the prospects for illegal immigration? And perhaps most importantly, the economy?
It depends who she appoints to the top jobs. If she keeps Shabana Mahmood in the Home Office, then again, that's somebody that I rate. And I think Shabana knows all the tricks of the immigration scandals and scams and so on, and is very determined to do something about it. And I think if she leaves, if Shabana is able to continue as Home Secretary, that will continue. If they want to make progress as far as the courts and reducing delays there, they're going to have to get rid of David Lammy, because he just likes dressing up and pouncing around, being important. He's not actually going to sort out the Ministry of Justice at all. Rachel Reeves, I think, is a busted flush. I feel very sorry for her. To see her crying in the House of Commons is heart-wrenching, especially for me as another woman. But you know what? You've got to be tougher than that if you're going to be a chancellor, and you've really got to be tough to take on that job, because you've got to say no, 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 no to all your colleagues. So that seems to be the way I would look at it. When it comes to security and defence, I'm kind of less worried about it, because defence has been set out very clearly. We have no choice about pushing up the amount that we spend, and I'd like to see us actually getting on with it and being part of a strong Europe, particularly against Putin.
Let's take a listen, Edwina, to Angela Rayner, leadership hopeful potentially of the Labour Party, speaking about Sleaze before being sacked for tax evasion.
In public life should mean upholding the highest standards of ethics and integrity. But the cronyism, sleaze and scandal we've seen over the past decade has undermined trust in politics and public life at home and abroad. Misconduct and sleaze has a direct impact on a government's ability to deliver for.
Well, there you go. She's pronouncing Angela Rayner there, Edwina, on sleaze and about standards in government. Of course, she was the first to attack Boris Johnson for Partygate and standing near a glass of orange juice during the pandemic. Well, there's a suggestion there that you're leaping out of the frying pan into the fire with Rayner, aren't you? She's got a rap list as long as your arm of issues, compromises to her integrity. The mystery about where she lived in the 2010s, which has never been fully cleared up, her affection for expensive Apple AirPod headphones, her campaigning against right to buy whilst profiting from the sale of her own council property, and now the avoidance of stamp duty on a property purchase as housing secretary. So it's not exactly an antidote to Starmer's sleaze, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think Starmer himself is that sleazy. I think they made an awful lot of mistakes by accepting posh kit from a wealthy donor and supporter, and it didn't occur to them, because they are good guys. You know, this is Starmer saying, I'm a good person, how could I possibly do anything wrong? And the answer is, of course you could. It's called, how shall I pronounce it, Mark? Hypocrisy.
We know that.
I live up here, I can do that, OK? I live up here. She's in the constituency, not that far away from where I'm living, up in Peak District. It's called hypocrisy, and the people who don't know that they are hypocrites are the hypocrites themselves, because they're not questioning their own behaviour. They put that to one side. What I do in private doesn't impact in any way on my public job, which of course I'm doing as well as anybody possibly could. I think Rayner is a liability right from the start. Yeah. And if that's all they can produce, that's a big, big, big mistake. But there are other people in Cabinet who I think are much less open to that kind of criticism. I think it's a false criticism to say, well, you know, there's a photograph of, say, West Streeting with Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson went out campaigning with all sorts of people, and when you're out on the doorsteps, you join everybody together and get a photo taken. That doesn't mean he was in Mandelson's pocket or under his influence. I think he would be a better choice, but well, we'll see. Have the Labour Party clung on to their collective intelligence, or have they completely lost their minds? It won't be long before we find out.
Absolutely. I think that I agree with you. I think Streeting or Shabana Mahmood would be an improvement on the current Prime Minister, but it's just a question of, you say, how tribal the party are going to be in their choice of a replacement. Just briefly, is there a limit, though, to how much damage a future Prime Minister could do to the country in the next 2 or 3 years?
Oh, there's no limit. They could do an enormous amount of damage. Goodness me. I mean, we're in a situation where the debt is rising month by month. The cost of the debt is sort of starting to stabilise because interest rates are coming down, which is really very, very good news. But all the promises about having more housing basically have vanished. Yeah. The buy-to-let market, as we all know, has disappeared. So you know, there's things will be worse before they actually start to get better. And to some extent, Mark, I think it depends on what happens as well in the other parties. If Shabana Mahmood is on top of immigration, then that pulls the rug out from under reform to a substantial degree. And the former Tory ministers and members who have gone off to reform are going to be, you know, washed up on the shore like kind of skeleton bones from an old whale. And I think Kemi is doing a very good job with the Tory party and is to a substantial degree reclaiming the centre right, you know, the pro-business centre right, that is as far as it possibly can be based on efficiency and organisation and small government. I think she could make real progress in the next couple of years, and I hope she does.
Edwina, thank you so much for your valuable time. We always love having you on the show. Edwina Curry, former government minister, best-selling author and broadcaster as well. Plenty of truth bombs from Edwina there, not pulling her punches. What will happen to illegal immigration if Angela Rayner becomes Prime Minister? I'll be asking the country's leading borders expert next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. So many messages coming in across a range of issues. This from Brian. Good morning, Mark. I'm all for people breaking through the glass ceiling, but if Angela Rayner ever achieves the office of PM, apart from it being a dark day for the country, it will be a reflection of how far this country has fallen. Keep up the great work. Brian, thank you for that. Response to my Dolan's dispatch coming in thick and fast. David in Leicestershire. Good morning, Mark. Fantastic summary of the spineless Starmer and his useless cronies earlier. Brilliant show. Loving it. David, thank you for that. Norman says, good morning, Mark. Does Angela Rayner realise that she cannot shoot off and party in Ibiza whenever she wishes when she's Prime Minister? No more DJ stints. You're quite right, no more mojitos on those pedalo things that she enjoys so much. Ian, by the way, is a fan of Angela Rayner and says, good morning, Mark. Can't wait for Angela Rayner to be Prime Minister. A decisive, capable woman who will take no messing. Ian, thank you for that. I will tell you that within the Labour movement, there are a lot of Angela Rayner fans out there. She's got an impressive backstory. Single parent mother, pregnant at 16, climbs her way to the top off the back of her talent and determination only. And she's on the so-called soft left of the party. She's very left-wing. And I think that many of the Labour supporters will go for her. But let's see. One question I've got, what happens to illegal immigration if we get a new Prime Minister? Let's get the views of Tony Smith, former head of UK Border Force. Good morning, Tony.
Morning, Mark.
It's good to see you. Tony, do you think a change at number 10 would move the dial regarding illegal immigration one way or the other?
Mark, I was what Edwina just said about Shabana Mahmood in the Home Office. I think she has made a difference in the Home Office. I think she's hit the ground running. And I think, as Edwina said, if she stays in the Home Office, then actually there will be progress on illegal immigration. Of course, changes at the top. The Prime Minister himself, Keir Starmer, came in very strongly with this mandate to abolish the Rwanda plan, you will remember, being from a human rights background himself. I think that was an error, because we do need to find a way of detaining and removing people arriving in this country illegally, particularly by small boat. And that did give us an alternative, which was immediately squashed and has now been passed into law with the new Border Security, Immigration and Asylum Act, which came in last year, which put to bed Rwanda once and for all, as well as abolishing the Safety of Rwanda Act. So I think probably, a change at the top a lot will depend upon who manages which departments, whether Shabana stays in the Home Office, and whether she is going to be able to persuade other cabinet colleagues to go further on what is needed to stop the boats. Because I think, Mark, and you will know full well as a journalist, that the biggest public concern are people arriving at our shores by small boats, getting through Manston within 24 hours, largely unvetted and undocumented, and going into the communities. I think people have made that pretty clear, Mark, whatever your political persuasion, that is not acceptable for the country's border security or immigration policy. And we've been really lucky this winter, Mark, with the weather. A 6-foot swell is enough to stop a dinghy getting across that waterway. And the weather conditions have been really conducive to law enforcement and not conducive to smugglers and migrants. So I think if we can get a lid on the boat arrivals and find a way of stopping or slowing or reducing significantly the number of people arriving by a small boat, that will go a long way to establishing some credibility with the new government, with this government, whoever leads it. But I think there is still a lot of work to be done.
And what's sad, isn't it, Tony, is that back in the day, illegal immigration was not a left versus right issue. The entire political establishment considered it to be a bad thing.
Well, Mark, I worked there for 40 years, man and boy, in the immigration, in its various manifestations for governments of lots of different colours. But actually, it was Tony Blair. I worked for his government, and he was very tough on asylum in the end, and introduced something called the tipping point, where we were given targets to remove failed asylum seekers, specific targets, to get more people removed from the country, asylum seekers, than the ones that were coming in. And we got pretty damn close to doing that through investment and legislation and so on. What's new is this phenomenon of coming across in a dinghy, from French beaches, which we can't really control. We can control entry through the ports of Calais and Dunkirk to an extent, but we can't control that. The breakdown really of any real support, I think, or initiatives from the French to stop this happening, and therefore the gap in where are we going to send people to if we detain them. So although we're hearing very strong messages from Reform and more recently from the Conservatives about the answer is detain and deport, that is easier said than done, because you have to, first of all, have somewhere to detain them, Mark. We haven't got very much of a detention estate in this country, and then you have to find somewhere to send them to. Many of the countries that we would like to send them back to won't take them, and we've got a very complicated legal framework still around human rights and asylum law, which takes an eternity sometimes to get through. So, when they say doing whatever it takes, not quite, you could do a lot more, but it's going to take a very, very bold government, I think, to take some of the steps that will be necessary to stop the boats once and for all. And even then, they might find it a step too far.
Well, that's right. Given his bold words, is there a risk that Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, will leave voters disappointed, Tony, if he's not able to stop the boats if he wins the next election?
Well, what Nigel's got going for him is that he hasn't had a go at this, and so he's been able to be consistent in his rhetoric that he will give me a chance and I will do this. I think the worry is he's surrounded by people that know the intricacies of immigration law and practice, border security and so on, that will be able to do it. And my own view, having operated in this for many years, is it will take time. You won't be able to stop the boats on day one. You really need to start pouring concrete now and changing your legislation to enable you to detain and deport people. And you really need a much stronger foreign policy. We've seen something just today with countries like Angola and Namibia, where we've exerted political pressure on them to take people back. But, you know, the bigger countries like Afghanistan, Syria, Eritrea, Iraq, Iran are still making up the biggest cohorts. It's really hard to return people to those countries. Many of them do have a genuine claim for asylum, actually, which is why I was a fan of Rwanda. And I would have had a triage plan where those that we could return to source countries we would do, and those that we couldn't would go to a safe third country. And I haven't really seen that. I think that was the biggest mistake this government has made. And I really need to understand a bit more about what the other parties are saying about how they're going to do that. But you're right. You know, on day one, it will be really hard. And as time goes by, any new government is going to come under pressure because people will get increasingly impatient. Well, you said you were going to fix this and you haven't.
Thank you, Tony. Tony Smith is the former head of UK Border Force, always talks so much sense on that issue. I wish he was Home Secretary, I've got to say. Paul in Fife, good morning, Mark. I'm sick to the back teeth of people like Edwina Curry telling us that Shabana Mahmood understands the illegal migrant crisis and being confident she'll address it. When exactly is she going to do anything other than talk about it? She, like her Labour colleagues, is gaslighting us to disaster. Good morning, Mark, says Colin. As a lifelong Bristol Rovers fan, can you please stop playing the video of Starmer visiting our stadium? It's embarrassing. Great show, says Harvey. How is Angela Rayner in the conversation become pre-em? She wasn't fit enough to be in office as the Housing Secretary following her stamp duty scandal. Surely, as Deputy PM, when Mandelson was appointed, she was briefed on the vetting of his history. John in Norfolk. Good morning, Mark. I'm incandescent at your guest this morning. I think he's talking about Paul Richards, Labour insider. He said, Mark, the lack of appreciation of what we are going through drives me nuts. Just be bloody honest for once, says John in Norfolk. And Ian in Gosport. Good morning, Mark. Your guest, Paul Richards, the Labour insider. He may know his politics, however, I've never heard so much spin in my life. Talk about trying to polish a doo-doo. What realm of fantasy does Mr. Richards live in? And Steve, good morning, Mark. By his very nature, I think Starmer will stay, just out of spite. But the thing that worries me is that he'll go full scorched earth and do something even crazier than he has already. Be afraid, folks, of an outgoing Prime Minister with a legacy to preserve. Here's a voice note from Johnny.
Morning, Mark. It's Johnny in the van. Just wanted to ring up to talk about the imminent departure of Kim Jong-Starmer and his potential replacement with thick as mince Rayner. This country's a laughing stock on the world stage. Can you imagine the comedy it's going to be if she gets into number 10? It's crazy. It's going to be a bumpy ride, mate. Hold tight. Great show. Take it easy.
Johnny, we will take that ride together. Thank you for an excellent voice note. We love the voice notes. We love the messages. We love the calls. Well, King Charles brutally heckled over Andrew and Epstein. That's next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast 9:38. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. The brilliant Peter Cardwell up at 10. I'm with you all weekend, folks. Saturday and Sunday, 6 till 10 a.m. A voice note from Dale on Labour.
Morning, Mark. Great show as always. Just on this point about Starmer. Look, he's holding on by a thread, and there's no needle involved to strengthen it. Like we're saying, it's not a case of if he'll go, it's a case of when. I would like to see him go today. I do believe he will go by the end of next week. The best thing he could do, if he was going to do one positive thing for the country, the best thing he could do is to call a general election. We've had years and years of back and forth Conservatives failing, now Labour failing. Labour failed before the Conservatives came into power 15 years ago. Cheers, mate. Dale from Stenning.
Oh, Dale, you got me all excited. The Prime Minister to stand down or to go in a week's time, that would be interesting. That would be dramatic. And what about a snap general election? We can but dream, Dale. Keep those predictions coming. Thank you for your voice note. The King has been brutally heckled in regard to his brother Andrew's links to Andrew Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, I should say. Rupert Bell is Talk's royal correspondent. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark.
Listen, what do you make of that? It's not a good look, is it, for the King to be heckled by a member of the public concerned about his younger brother's links to a convicted paedophile?
Well, let's put it in. The whole thing, Epstein, is causing not only a political problem, as you've been talking, no doubt, most of the morning.
Yeah.
But also this is an example of the constitutional fallout from Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's links to Jeffrey Epstein, because it is a huge problem for the royal family. And as we saw earlier this week, the King took a pretty dim view to seeing him being photographed in Windsor Great Park, and then said almost it was a sort of sling your hook, mate, let's get you up to Sandringham, because we can't have you grinning and going out as if there is absolutely nothing going on. And the fact is that the royal family is struggling to get positive publicity. So there is the King going about what he likes doing, which is a walkabout, and the Andrew fallout is causing him to be heckled at. Then I think there were things on the street about the royal oh, excuse me, Mark.
Bless you.
About the royal family. So really, this is a big problem for the royal family, and it is. But some would say, were they slow to act? Well, we all thought at the end of last year, the fact that when he stripped his titles, you thought, right, he's trying to get a grip of the situation. But this latest tranche of emails have compounded the problem and made the King have a huge problem. William, it was interesting, Mark, to see Edward sort of put his head above the parapet when he was in the UAE this week to say, I spare a thought for the victims, slightly hanging his brother out to dry. But it is a big problem for the King. How does he sort of prevent this sort of running out of control if it hasn't already?
Well, that's right. He needs a post-Royal Lodge strategy, doesn't he, Rupert? He's pulled every lever known to man, including stripping his brother of his Duke of York title. HRH went, of course, in 2020, losing the Order of the Garter. Let's take a listen. We do have the clip of the King being heckled. Take a listen.
Where did we get? I'm getting round the corner.
Yep.
Well, of course, it's a tragedy for the King. He doesn't want his reign to be defined by a Cold War with his youngest son in California, his cancer battle, and his disgraced younger brother.
Well, and this is the problem for the royal family. They're desperate to try and get on the front foot, but everywhere you turn, there seems to be an issue. At the moment, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are keeping a low profile, so there isn't anything going on there at the moment. But for Andrew, maybe they're just keeping a low profile because they don't need to do anything. For Andrew, it just seems to be getting worse. Even when you read that what were they thinking when you suddenly hear that Epstein was bailing out Sarah Ferguson and that Andrew was having to step in, and that photograph in 2010 when they're seen walking through Central Park, he's trying to allegedly sort out a debt that the Sarah Ferguson had then when she was facing bankruptcy. You know, the whole thing is just so unedifying. And then obviously you hear some of the other stories and allegations around what was going on with women coming to London to meet Andrew. I mean, it just gets worse and worse, and it's such a bad look. You can't get away from it. And the royal family are just, you know, it's almost head down. And you hear Keir Starmer, he's trying to get into a bunker and keep his head down. But for the king, he's going to probably have to face a lot more of this. And when he goes on his public duties, which will be very distressing for him, because he does want to be seen to be out there. But okay, this may have been a lone voice, but it does reflect the simmering frustrations with people within this country. That what do they do about Andrew? What can he do? Bearing in mind, Mark, Andrew's always protested his innocence, but obviously there must be pressure on him to tell the truth and do something, and maybe now being squirreled away to Sandringham won't see his picture now grinning on the front pages of newspapers less often. But I'm sure there'll be people trying to find out what he's doing. You know, it's just the way the world works.
Well, indeed, how visible are the residents of the Sandringham estate? Will we still see photographs of Andrew in the Range Rover or riding horses?
Look, I think it's harder because obviously when you drive around the Windsor Great Park, it's open to the public. You can drive down there and you can see him, and obviously if he doesn't want to be seen, he'd make sure he was not seen. But when we see it, every time there seemed to be someone able to photograph him. So it is going to be harder because it's very much a private estate up there. But it's what Andrew does. And how does he cope now with being sent away into exile in Norfolk? What do the people of Norfolk think? And so around Sandringham, that they've got Andrew up there, disgraced now, in hiding almost. And for the royal family, I'm sure it is exercising them. Some people are saying, should they make a statement? Should the king say something? Well, maybe in time they're going to have to think about how they do deal with this, if at all. They obviously have the mantra, never explain, never complain, never explain, is their sort of in their DNA. But this Andrew case is not only causing the Labour government a huge headache, and bearing in mind Starmer has a weekly conference with the King as well, I'm sure the Epstein issue is something that they will have to have discussed, even though it's behind closed doors, because it's affecting them both in obviously slightly different ways, but it is still something that is causing both of them enormous headaches.
And speaking of headaches, it's my understanding that a number of members of staff are refusing to serve Andrew in his new accommodation in Sandringham. So he might have to answer his own front door, Rupert.
Well, yes, and does he know how to cook a pizza? Obviously, he went to Pizza Express, well, allegedly went to Pizza Express in Woking. The fact of the matter is, he's not always the most popular person, and it is actually interesting. If he had friends, I mean, people know because of his behaviour, he's short of friends. And if you were popular and you felt that even defending him, he might find it easier. But I'm sure there are rumours that the way he behaves with his staff is not very good. And so maybe they feel enough is enough. We don't need to be linked to him anymore. And it is going to be interesting. How does this develop? You know, will there be looks into what was covered up, maybe even by the protection staff, who must have known his behaviour, what was going on behaviour-wise. So there's going to be possible all sorts of ramifications. And for the royal family, this is a very difficult time in terms of dealing with that. Not only the king, as you say, trying to battle and continue his recovery from cancer. You know, he's in his mid-70s, and this is not, he wants to have enjoyed his time as king. Well, it has to be said, since he has ascended to the throne, it hasn't been a barrel of laughs.
No, it hasn't, and it's a shame because it's defining his reign at the moment. and it's a role he waited so long for. I've got a quick message, briefly, if you can, Rupert. David says, good morning, Mark. Do you honestly think that King Charles didn't know what Andrew had been up to? The Queen paid Jouffre compensation. Pull the other one, says David. It's got bells on it. And that's the headache for the King, is a perception that he must have known something.
Well, yes, because it would have been discussed, you know, his brother paying $12 million to Virginia Jouffre when he protested his innocence. Again, maybe there's, you know, Starmer's defence earlier this week as well, I didn't know everything. I just wonder whether the reason he had his title stripped is that eventually the King grabbed the situation and said, is anything more coming out? And probably Andrew may have had to say, I don't know. And at that moment, it was then that the King said, well, I can't risk it. You're out of here. And that would have been the moment. So, yes, they may have known his behaviour, but as your brother, you may be saying, well, I've got to have a degree of trust. And he hopefully, but unfortunately, it's beginning to look like that trust was very much misplaced. And yes, he would have known that obviously he's entangled in something since that Newsnight interview, and maybe before. It's been downhill all the way for Andrew. And actually, while he's going downhill, he does appear to be dragging the royal family as well.
Thank you, Rupert. Catch up soon to Rupert Bellis Talks royal correspondent. Ongoing drama around Epstein, which is not just a political issue, it affects our monarchy as well. Here is a voice note from Damon on the state of our modern politics.
Good morning, Mark. Damon from Wigan. When I was in the army, the Labour Party promised that the budgets wouldn't be cut. While I served in the army, the budget was cut. When I came out of the army and went into the fire service, Labour again, we will not cut the budget, you will be safe, we look after everybody. They cut the budget. They tried to cut my pension when I retired from the fire service. I have just lost all hope in politicians, and I don't think over the last 20 years politicians have the interests of the country at heart.
Well, look, damning words there, Damon. I feel that you're right, and I spoke about it in Dolan's dispatch last week, that those who govern us are working against us, not for us. Listen, keep that thought going, and I appreciate that voice note. So much more to come. It is 9:50. This is Talk Breakfast. Will Starmer's replacement be worse?
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we're no stranger to a bit of drama here at Talk Towers, but it all kicked off next door at Talk Boxing, of course, which is one of the brands associated with Talk Sport, which is the biggest sports radio station in the world. Now, the boxer Deontay Wilder stormed out of the Talk Sport studio after confronting the host, Simon Jordan, in a furious and fiery row. Wilder joined heavyweight rival Derek Chisora to preview their upcoming clash on April the 4th at London's O2 Arena. But total chaos broke out. So Jordan and Wilder were embroiled in an astonishing clash. It started when Talk Boxing host Jordan quizzed Wilder about his trilogy of fights with Tyson Fury, which saw the pair initially fight to a draw in 2018 before the American suffered 2 defeats in 2020 and 21. Now, Wilder initially refused to answer any questions about Fury, but when Jordan continued to pry, the 40-year-old snapped and saw red. The bronze bomber replied, "I won't talk about him. We're not going to talk about him at all." Let's take a listen.
You talked about being cheated in that fight. You talked about water being spiked. You talked about your Game of Thrones outfit being too heavy for you.
I didn't say that.
You said it was too heavy for you.
I didn't say that.
Okay, well, I might be wrong on that one. You talked about the long...
Y'all took a journalist that said something because y'all, you know, everybody wanted to come in, oh, wow, boom, boom, boom.
You talked about a long count,
you know,
right? And then you talked about the trainers, Mark Dolan not being good enough.
No, I ain't say he wasn't good enough.
So what I'm asking you in all of this is, it sounds to me, given the character that you are, that's like a little bit flaky. You lost those fights, and those fights were lost. And you saying that someone like Fury cheated you in those fights, I think is kind of disappointing to me about you.
Because I know the truth. I have the facts.
Okay.
Understand that. Because when the documentary and everything that started come out, I'm going to show everything.
Fantastic.
I'm going to get all the people that know.
You think
and
I'm a
all the
Fury
people
fan?
that's in the inside. He got people that the inside of him.
I'm a Fury
that
fan?
know. I don't, what?
No,
I don't give a about that.
I'm not a Fury fan.
I don't give a about it. I said we didn't want to bring him up in the first place. It ain't got to do with him.
Fair enough.
Oh, my goodness. Get security. I need reaction. Let's speak to former European boxing champion, TalkSport presenter and host of the Pound for Pound podcast, Spencer Oliver. Good morning, Spencer.
Good morning, Mark. How are you? Yeah, I was actually in the studio. Yeah, so asking Deontay about Tyson Fury. He didn't want to talk about Tyson Fury, so Simon decided to push him on it, said that he wanted some answers, and yeah, all hell broke loose. Deontay Wilder he just lost it. You know, he just got up, and there was a moment there where you thought, well, don't know what way this is going to go here. Where is he going? He was only moments away from exploding. But yeah, crazy scenes in the TalkSport boxing studios. It was a crazy moment, and obviously you can catch that full interview on the TalkSport Boxing YouTube channel. TalkSport Boxing Show was it was quite something.
Yeah, it was a great moment of broadcasting, Spencer. Is Deontay Wilder just a sore loser because he's not yet defeated Fury in the ring?
No, he hasn't. And that was the bizarre thing. Now, he says that the reasons that he lost to Tyson Fury was because Tyson Fury had cheated, and he has proof in that, and he's...
Now, folks, unfortunately, we've got a little bit of a delay on the line. I think actually it might be an internet connection. I'm so sorry, but I've got to tell you that if you are in boxing and you've got the opponent, you can't beat them. There's no point having a fight with Simon Jordan, who, by the way, is one of the finest broadcasters in the country. And he knows an awful lot about professional sport, particularly football, as a former club owner himself. But the bottom line is that this guy, Wilder, he shouldn't pick a fight with Simon Jordan, who's there to ask questions. Why haven't you beaten this guy? It shows how thin-skinned they are. They're just as bad as the politicians, aren't they? I will say that Simon Jordan was very brave, because this Deontay Wilder bloke, he may not have beaten Tyson Fury, but one right hook from that bloke, and it's game over. Your lights are knocked out, aren't they? Is it game over for the Prime Minister? What do you think? Is it when, not if? Michael says, good morning, Mark. Angela Rayner as PM on the world stage? My God, no! It would make the UK the laughing stock of the world. Shopping in Primark for a leader. Michael, I think that's very harsh on Primark. I'm trying to think if I'm wearing any Primark today. I am actually. I think I'm wearing a Primark shirt. It's flammable, so don't smoke near me. David says, Mark, do you honestly think that King Charles didn't know what Andrew had been up to back in the day? Alison in Kent. Good morning, Mark. With approximately 70 million people in this country, if Rayner is the best we can do for PM, our country is in the biggest pile of doo-doo imaginable. And Dave says, good morning, Mark. I think Starmer should call for a general election and quit just to teach all the backstabbers in his party a lesson. With me in the studio is the brilliant Peter Cardwell, who isn't just the host of Mid-Mornings from 10 a.m. onwards today, but also with his finger on the political pulse. Peter, what's going to happen?
Hello there. Well, actually, it's interesting you mentioned Primark there. I remember